historic $2 trillion rescue plan to respond to the economic and health crisis caused by the coronavirus pandemic. It will steer aid to businesses, workers and healthcare systems. The legislation passed unanimously and will now go before the House of Representatives. More than 69,000 people in the US have been infected, and according to a Johns Hopkins University tally, more than 1,000 Americans have died. And in terms of this fiscal stimulus, Roger, that in combination with all the measures the Fed has taken, Larry Kudlow has previously said that it amounts to about $6 trillion of stimulus to the US economy. And the White House chief economic advisor also commented on the US jobless claim, saying they'll show a very large increase. He didn't give a specific number, though.
Well, that's where I think perhaps the clue will come as to how bad things are, because it could be the worst jobless claims report since the end of World War II, possibly. Economists forecasting claims rose to 1.5 million, about 5 times the prior week.
And in the UK, millions who work for themselves will be promised a rescue package as the coronavirus pandemic threatens their incomes. Chancellor Rishi Sunak will announce assistance to the self-employed today in what will be his 4th set of emergency measures to cope with the economic fallout from the coronavirus crisis. Speaking yesterday, the Prime Minister said the government has put its arms around people to financially support them in a way which hasn't been done before.
People do understand that the complexity of their working arrangements has meant that it has been harder to come up with the right tailored programme for the self-employed as well.
And according to a recent YouGov poll, 1 in 20 Britons has lost a job because of the coronavirus outbreak, and 9% experienced a reduction in hours or pay.
And staying in the UK, we hear from the Bank of England today, but after an unprecedented third meeting of policymakers this month, today's decision may focus more on assessment than action. Bloomberg's George Shanker has the preview.
It's rare for a Bank of England policy meeting to seem like an anticlimax, especially in a crisis like this one. But it's hard to see any further change in rates from the record low 0.1%. There are no signs of pulling the benchmark below zero, and the bank has already decided to kickstart a new round of bond buying in 2 emergency moves this month. Andrew Bailey's first meeting as governor could see a further expansion of quantitative easing, perhaps more special measures to keep credit flowing, as the data suggests the economy is facing a major downturn. In London, George Shanker, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Now, ECB policymakers are said to be broadly in favour of activating the outright monetary transactions programme that would allow the central bank to buy nearly unlimited quantities of a nation's sovereign debt. The OMT, designed in 2012 after Mario Draghi vowed to do whatever it takes to save the euro, has never been used. What's interesting, though, Roger, is with the ECB announcing its PEPP, which of course is the programme in response to the coronavirus, Frédéric Ducrozet of Pictet was tweeting about this yesterday and pointing out that actually the issuer limit doesn't apply to emergency asset purchases. This is not the same as the asset purchase programme. So actually, would OMT make that much difference to what the OECD is already able to do under this new emergency virus package?
Yeah, the ECB continues to talk about that. Meanwhile, separately, Germany is considering a targeted stimulus plan to revive growth once the virus epidemic subsides. Speaking to Bloomberg, the Finance Minister Olaf Scholz said while additional spending to kickstart growth may follow on from Germany's €750 billion rescue plan, banks are unlikely to get extra help.
The question of stimulus is coming when we are through this situation. It must be timely and targeted, and it must be temporary. So instruments like this that help the economy to start again.
That was Germany's Finance Minister Olaf Scholz.
Those are your top stories. For the latest in global news, here's Bloomberg's Leanne Gerrans. Hi, Leanne.
Naira, good morning. Spain has recorded its deadliest day since the coronavirus outbreak with 738 deaths. This raises the total fatalities to around 3,400. Bloomberg's Macarena Montino has more.
The number of confirmed cases jumped to more than 47,600. Spain's health minister said these numbers are likely to increase over the next few days and announced the country has acquired health material from China for €430 million. Madrid, Macarena Muñoz, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Let's cross over to Italy, where cautious optimism is the mood as new coronavirus cases decline. Bloomberg's Alessandro Speciale has the details.
The country, Europe's most hit so far, reported 5,210 new cases on Wednesday and 683 deaths. Both those numbers are lower than those recorded on Tuesday and seems to hint that the drastic containment measures are finally starting to pay off. In Rome, Alessandro Speciale, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
In the UK, pressure is building on Prime Minister Boris Johnson over the lack of virus testing. The government's top medical advisor says the UK must learn from other countries' experiences, warning the National Health Service may be overwhelmed by the pandemic. Chief Medical Officer Chris Whitty says the UK's testing capacity has been hobbled by global supply bottlenecks. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg Naira.
Leanne, thank you so much. Now, coming up on Daybreak Europe, ECB policymakers are said to be open to activating their most powerful bond buying tool, that's outright monetary transactions, to help the region's coronavirus hit economy. We'll talk more about that and the state of the pandemic in Europe. We're seeing yields slide across the core and the periphery in Europe. The 10-year BTP yield down 6 basis points. 10-year Bund yield drops 5 basis points. We're also seeing a little bit of a retreat in equities after the best 2 days since the financial crisis. The stock 600 in the red. This is Bloomberg.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
Family properties and investments have been passed to the next generation, but while the business has evolved, has your accountant stayed behind? Burden Accountants and Advisors examines the latest business trends, market conditions, and industry issues to maximize your tax advantages and meet your financial goals. Let Burden use their insight to create innovative tax solutions for your family and your business. Visit burdenllp.com to get started. BERDONLLP.com. Burden Accountants and Advisors. We listen, we solve, we do.
Okay, kids, Dad's gonna teach you how to dance. First, spread your feet apart. Then, pump your knee, nod your head, shake your hips, and bite your lip ever so slightly. Now, with one hand in the air, point at people with the other hand. I call that the rock star.
Dance like a dad. It's a great way to make a moment with your kids.
Now, make a face like it just smells something bad.
Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Heidi Stroud-Watts.
As the coronavirus continues to spread, schools remain closed around the globe. To help deal with this, Sydney-based Open Learning is providing online classes to those affected. The company has now partnered with Alibaba Cloud to get high-speed access to students in mainland China. Joining us now is Open Learning Limited founder and group CEO, Adam Bremo. Adam, great to have you with us. Talk to me about what I'm imagining is just a surge in demand and how the company has been coping with that.
Open Learning's focus is to be one of the leading lifelong learning platforms in the world. We have about 1.7 million students globally. We work with education providers, but really our goal is to deliver high quality online education with the education providers, universities, colleges, corporates. But we're seeing quite strong interest at the moment across the sector from institutions that have been impacted both positively and negatively from the crisis.
Have you seen kind of interest in this part of the world, and what are schools doing to get a coherent, consistent online curriculum going?
Yeah, so we are seeing a number of challenges across the sector. Our focus has historically been on universities, colleges, vocational education, but we are also seeing interest from schools who are trying to transition their curriculum online.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Good morning from London. I'm Sandra Kilhoff with this Bloomberg Business Flash. Now, European equities are moving lower as the coronavirus cases and death toll continue to rise. Investors paying more attention now to the human impact than the stimulus packages we've seen from governments in the past couple of days. That's sending the Stock 600 down 2%. The FTSE leading declines, currently down 3% here in London. The DAX sliding 2.3%. US futures also pointing to a lower open. This as investors are a bit concerned about that US jobless claims data point due out later today, something to watch out for. Now, the dollar is weaker for a third day in a row. The Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index sliding 0.4% at the moment. Meanwhile, the yen is bid up 0.8% at 110.3 against the greenback. We're also seeing sterling and the euro up, both up 0.5%. The sterling above 119, the euro above 109 at the moment. Otherwise, commodity currencies feeling the brunt of losses today. Aussie and Kiwi dollars both weaker earlier, but now recouping some of those losses and fairly flat at the moment. Over in government bonds, we are seeing them gain on those fresh haven flows. 10-year Treasury yield sliding 7 basis points to 80 basis points. 10-year bund yields are currently down 5 basis points to negative 31. 10-year gilt yields down 3 basis points at 42 basis points. 10-year BTP sliding 6 basis points to 148. Oil is slipping after 3 days of gains. WTI now back below $24 a barrel, down 3.5% at the moment. Gold also down 0.6% at $1,607 a troy ounce. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Leanne Garens with more on what's going on around the world.
Sandra, thank you. China's restarting transport services in Hubei, the province where the coronavirus was first reported. Rail and road links are coming back a day after the government announced the lifting of the lockdown in all but the epicenter of Wuhan, which must wait 2 more weeks. Long-distance buses are back on the roads, taking migrant workers to their jobs. North Korean officials are seeking urgent help from international contacts to increase coronavirus testing, according to the Financial Times. Bordered by China, Russia and South Korea, which has been among the hardest hit, North Korea claims it has no cases of the virus. In January, leader Kim Jong-un brought his already isolated country to a near standstill by sealing the borders to stop the spread. And over in the US, McDonald's will temporarily take off some items from its menu in an effort to simplify its operations amid the coronavirus outbreak. That's according to Reuters. However, the report didn't say which items would be removed from Mackie D's menus. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on QuickTake by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Garens. This is Bloomberg. Naira.
Leanne, thank you so much. Now, with no signs of the coronavirus pandemic abating, investors are waiting for a unified European response. This as Spain recorded its deadliest day in terms of the disease. And despite calls for more fiscal intervention to bolster the economy, yesterday's Euro meeting proved inconclusive. That said, ECB policymakers are considering using their most powerful bond buying tool. For more, let's go live to Brussels, where Bloomberg's Maria Tadeo is standing by. Maria, great to catch up again. So we're talking here about the ECB activating potentially outright monetary transactions which were created for the debt crisis but never actually used. Is the market actually expecting that will make a huge amount of difference given what they've already done with the PEPP and the potential to tweak the capital key to allow buying of Italian bonds, for example, anyway?
Right, Naira, I think you're actually spot on. And every trader that I've spoken to this morning have told me the fact that the PPP has made it clear that the issuer limit will not apply to it actually makes OMT less relevant, because essentially you've handed the market huge flexibility. And some of the people that I spoke to actually told me this is, in fact, game changer for the ECB. Interestingly, too, another idea that had been floated was getting the ESM to play a role here. To get a country like Italy to tap into it up to 2% of GDP and use it as a credit line. What I also steer is the fact that you have a European Central Bank that is going to be so active and essentially has been stripped away from some of the limits in terms of what it's allowed to buy now, will make that credit line look less attractive for a country like Italy. Why would you tap into the ESM? Why would you want to be seen as being bailed out when, in fact, the European Central Bank is out there and can help you?
Yeah, Maria, so we've got the Eurogroup teleconference today, the leaders talking to each other. What really is on the table then today?
Well, look, the European Central Bank, especially that tweak to the PPP program, really has changed a lot of things from a market perspective. But when you look at the politics, what people want to see is further coordination. We have seen national stimulus packages being implemented. We've actually seen a lot of money that has been pledged. But I think what the market wants to see now is a step further. And they really want to see all of the EU 27 working in kind of the same roadmap. And there has been a lot of debate as to what do we do from here when the crisis is over. We have to deal with a recession. I'm sure you're very aware that this debate of Corona bonds simply does not go away. The Germans have said this is something that they don't contemplate. The Dutch really don't like it. But I would say there was a letter that was published yesterday, 24 hours before today's call. This is usually what you do when you want to lobby for a position, in which Emmanuel Macron, Giuseppe Conte, Sanchez, and a number of other European leaders actually said it's time to think outside of the box. He needs something that looks like a joint debt instrument going forward.
Maria, globally across assets, it seems that the focus in markets has shifted away from policy responses, whether fiscal or monetary, and actually towards the health crisis itself and signs that the pandemic is not abating. Spain saw its death toll absolutely surge. What's the latest on the pandemic spread in Europe? Because Italy was seen as the epicenter, but the numbers and the curve in Spain looking very scary.
Yes, and I don't want to speculate. I don't want to say that Spain is going to become the new Italy because this changes by the hour, but it is true that we are seeing numbers that look very similar to what Italy looked like a week ago. We have seen the number of deaths really rocket, 700 in one day, and we've also seen the number of cases just fly through the roof. We're also looking at 50,000 cases in the space of a week, and this is not going to end. At least that's not the signal that we have from the Spanish government, which is saying this is going to be our worst week yet, and we need to be ready to see those numbers pick up. And economically, for the labor market, this is terrible news, but also the social impact that it has.
Indeed, Maria, thanks very much. Maria today, they're live on the line from Brussels. Coming up later, we'll be talking about the US Senate voting through that stimulus package. How's it looking out there at the moment, Nara?
Well, the market's looking through that already, or gotten over it at least. The stock 600 down more than 2%. Roger, we're also seeing US futures on the back foot. S&P E-minis down 2% and yield sliding in the US and Europe. This is Bloomberg.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report, I'm Michael Barr. All the sponsors of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics will retain their sponsorship rights despite the postponement of the Games due to the coronavirus epidemic. The president of the International Olympic Committee, Thomas Bach, says it is a logical consequence that the sponsors of the Olympic Games, Tokyo 2020, that they keep their rights even if the Games are organized in 2021. Some key sponsors of the Games, including General Electric and Procter & Gamble, have agreements that are scheduled to expire at the end of 2020. And there's another major sporting event that's in limbo, the Tour de France. The cycling race is scheduled for June 27th. Organizers are thinking about holding a stripped-down version of the race. France's sports minister says holding the race is of paramount importance. And the manager of the Belgian team says if there's no Tour de France, the whole model of cycling can collapse. And that's a Bloomberg Business of Sports report. I'm Michael Barr.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Today, nearly all business is international business. The same goes for business disputes. That's why the International Center for Dispute Resolution provides a faster, more efficient approach to dispute resolution across borders. Backed by the American Arbitration Association, the ICDR is the world's leading provider of dispute resolution services. Find out why global expertise matters. Visit ICDR.org.
Every sound, every voice, every note. Expect perfection with Lynn products. 5 decades of innovation deliver that distinct Lynn sound, bringing you closer to your music and films. From turntables, loudspeakers, and streaming devices, you can guarantee Lynn to provide room-filling, amplifying, jaw-dropping sound that all becomes clear when you hear it. Beautiful listening experiences, hand-built by Lynn. Visit lynnproducts.co.uk to book your experience at one of our retailers, or join us in Harrods in the 5th floor technology department.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Attention, all units on tactical.
Boys, just pick a track. I'm trying to drive.
Sorry. Your mate's more likely to crash with passengers in a car, so don't drive him to distraction. Let a mate concentrate.
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
I love dogs and cats. Short-haired, long-haired. I love you all, don't I, Bianca? But I don't love cat hair all over my carpet, which is why I got a job testing vacuum cleaners in the Witch Test Lab. We rub an exact amount of real pet hair into an exact area of real carpet to see which vacuum cleaners really suck it up. And the vacuums that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your home. Witch.co.uk. Our tests find you the best.
Broadcasting live to London on DAB digital radio, to New York, Bloomberg 1130, to Washington DC, Bloomberg 99.1, to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1, to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
8:30 a.m. in London, 9:30 if you're listening in Paris, Frankfurt or Brussels. Good morning, everyone. I'm Naira Chehich.
And I'm Roger Hearing, and you're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Roger, 30 minutes into the equity market open, we're in the red on the Stock 600, down 1.9% after the best 2 days since the financial crisis, or the best 2-day rally since then. Across regional equity benchmarks, you're seeing the FTSE 100 down 2.8%, the CAC 40 and DAX both down more than 2%, so is the IBEX, the FTSE MIB lower by 1.5%. And US futures are also taking a hit, with Dow, S&P and Nasdaq futures all down at least 1.4%, S&P E-minis leading the losses. It looks like we had a little bit of front running in risk assets ahead of the Senate stimulus plan, and attention now very much shifting away from what policymakers are doing to try and contain the impact of the virus to the spread of the virus itself and the increases we're seeing in cases and death tolls worldwide. You're seeing that concern reflected in bond markets as well. The 10-year Treasury yield down 7 basis points. 80 handle is what we look at. And yield sliding in Europe as well. This might also have something to do with reports that the ECB is considering enacting outright monetary transactions. A 10-year bund yield down 4 basis points to negative 30. Spread tightening on the BTP bund spread as that BTP yield drops 9 basis points to a 145 handle, and the 10-year gilt yield slipping 3 basis points to a 41 handle ahead of the BOE meeting. Taking a look at currencies, a third day of dollar weakness. The yen is outperforming. The euro also now one of the best performers in G10, and you're seeing continued pressure on commodity currencies like the CAD and the Aussie dollar. And speaking of commodities, after a 9% rally over 3 days, WTI and Brent both down 4%. WTI at $23.50 a barrel, Brent at $26.27. Gold holds above $1,600 an ounce, but we're down 0.7%. Roger.
Right, well, let's move on to some of today's top stories. Now, the World Health Organization has issued a rare public scolding. It says governments need to stop wasting the time needed to fight the virus. The international agency's chief says we've squandered the first window of opportunity to stop the outbreak, but we have a second chance. As 150 countries across the world have fewer than 100 reported cases, there is still time to prepare.
And carrying on with the ECB question, it may decide to activate its most powerful bond buying tool. We've learned there's broad support in the Governing Council for outright monetary transactions, or OMT. The measures allow the ECB to buy nearly unlimited quantities of a nation's sovereign debt, pushing down bond yields to help make fiscal stimulus more affordable.
Meanwhile, the Bank of England set for an unprecedented third meeting this month. But this scheduled session may be a less dramatic affair. Policymakers have already slashed interest rates to a record low 0.1%. And the new governor, Andrew Bailey, isn't in support of pulling the benchmark below zero. One possible option is a further expansion of quantitative easing.
Yeah, and on that question, Roger, I mean, Governor Andrew Bailey has already expressed discomfort at taking rates negative in the UK. But questions are being asked whether what we might get next is some form of people's QE.
Indeed. I mean, that would be a fascinating experiment all in itself. But people are trying out so many new things in this environment. But let's move to the US, where the Senate's passed a $2 trillion virus rescue plan. Republicans and Democrats reached the agreement after a series of intense negotiations, and the package includes an unprecedented injection of loans, tax breaks, and direct payments into the economy. The US now has more than 69,000 confirmed cases of the coronavirus. And let's bring in our senior international editor on that, Jody Schneider. So, Jody, now the Senate's passed the $2 trillion package. Is the House definitely going to take it up? And on that basis, how soon does it get President Trump's signature?
Yes, Nancy Pelosi, the House Speaker, a Democrat, has said they will take it up, and they will take it up right away. So it looks like this is on a glide path to go to President Trump, and it's expected to go there, within the next day. He has already said he will sign it. So it looked like the holdup had been in the Senate. They had some procedural issues they were working out. They had some partisan wrangling, including over some Republicans didn't like the set amount of unemployment insurance that all recipients were getting. But they were able to work that out, and it looks like the House will pass it and the president will sign it. And those checks, the Treasury Secretary said, could start getting to individuals as soon as in about 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's interesting how they got past the issue of the unemployment insurance, Jody, because the concern was that you give these $600 to people and that it increases the risk of layoffs. It's an unprecedented package in size and scope, dwarfing the $800 billion stimulus that former President Barack Obama enacted after the financial crisis. What exactly are we going to see here? Because we have the details now. They were scant yesterday.
Yeah, so it is unprecedented, both in size and in scope of it. It has things like loans, $500 billion in loans and assistance for big companies, including some airlines. There's a separate pot of about $350 billion for small businesses. Individuals will get checks. Low and middle income Americans will get $1,200 $1,200 for each adult and $500 for each child. That will just be sent in the check. And unemployment insurance, as we've been discussing, will be vastly expanded. There's also money in there for hospitals, which of course are hurting, given that some are just having a flow of coronavirus patients and are overwhelmed. There's also tax breaks in here, both for companies and in some cases individuals, and there is also tax deferral. There's a lot in here. It was intended to basically help out as people are staying home. People will lose their jobs, and there's a lot of people who just can't even get back to work, even if they still have a job.
Yeah, Jody, it's interesting in all this. I mean, is there a consensus really that this is what Americans want? Obviously we're hiccups on Capitol Hill, but in the end, is this something that everyone's pretty much agreed on needs to be done?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that first of all, we're not even going to know the extent of the economic damage for some time, and it also depends on how long this virtual shutdown in some parts of the country goes on. Some are saying it will go on a very long time. So I think people are thinking this at least gives a little bit of confidence that there's a backstop, that that Congress is looking at both doing some things for the companies that are really hurting, so that these companies will be around after whatever length of time the shutdown occurs, and for individuals as well.
Jody,
so I think this is a confidence boosting measure that, hey, we understand things are going to be really tough, and here's some assistance, here's some aid. Now, of course, both chambers of Congress have already said they will probably be having to do more and more of these packages that add to the size of the deficit. But right now, deficit concerns don't seem to be raised much on Capitol Hill. It's more about getting money to people and industries that need it right away.
Yeah, and that makes sense, Jody, certainly in terms of dealing with the economy when we get out on the other side of the crisis. I did want to ask whether the amount that's been set aside for healthcare itself is being seen as enough, given that is what the markets are very much focused on at the moment. But let's get to the world news. Thank you so much, Jody Schneider, our senior international editor. Leanne Gerrans has our world news.
Naira, good morning. Spain has suffered its deadliest day yet as the number of virus deaths surpassed those reported so far in China. Fatalities rose 738 and went over 3,400. Spain's health minister has said these numbers are likely to increase over the next few days. He also announced the country has acquired healthcare equipment from China for €430 million. Now, here in the UK, 3.5 million home testing kits that show whether someone has been exposed to the coronavirus are expected to be available within days. That's according to Sharon Peacock, director of the UK's National Infection Service, who says scientists from Oxford University first need to finish evaluating them for public use. The government's chief medical officer, Chris Whitty, says a test for that is important, but it has to be done right.
The one thing that's worse than no test is a bad test. So telling someone inaccurately either they have had it or have not had it could lead to dangerous mistakes being made. So we do not want to go ahead with testing until we're confident of the technology.
Now in India, the 3-week-long countrywide lockdown is preventing much-needed medical equipment from reaching hospitals and clinics. This comes as a reality of the government's order aimed at containing the spread of the coronavirus starts to bite. Strict movement curbs being enforced by local governments are hampering supplies of medical devices and personal protective equipment for health workers. And the gunman who attacked 2 mosques in the New Zealand city of Christchurch last year has unexpectedly pleaded guilty to all of the charges. Bloomberg's Matthew Brockett has more on the worst massacre in the country's history.
The man, Australian Brenton Tarrant, entered guilty pleas to 51 charges of murder, 40 charges of attempted murder and 1 charge of engaging in a terrorist act. He had previously denied all the charges. The lone gunman attacked 2 mosques on March 15 last year using modified semi-automatic weapons. He live-streamed the shootings to social media. In Wellington, Matthew Brockett, Bloomberg Daybreak, Europe.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg Naira.
Leanne, thank you so much. Coming up on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, Scott Teal, Chief Fixed Income Strategist at BlackRock, joins us next. Lots to discuss, including how fixed income markets are positioned ahead of US jobless claims and the reaction to the Senate plan out of the US. This is Bloomberg.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Something remarkable happens when just the right elements come together. Ideas with technology, data with inspiration, investors with solutions. This is what Invesco does every day, because they believe the possibilities of life and investing are greater when we come together. Invesco. Let's invest in greater possibilities together. To learn more, visit Invesco.com/together. Invesco Distributors, Incorporated.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
U.S. have passed 1,000, with infections near 70,000. New York City is responsible for nearly a third of all cases, and that has the White House preparing to send crucial supplies to the area.
I want you to know that I'm doing everything in my power to help the city pull through this challenge. I'm working very hard in New York. It's really, by far, our biggest problem.
Sources tell us FEMA will take charge of allocating medical supplies across the country. Experts warn there is no clear timeline for the peak of the virus or for the ensuing recovery. Anthony Fauci is director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases.
You've got to understand that you don't make the timeline. The virus makes the timeline. So you've got to respond in what you see happen. And if you keep seeing this acceleration, it doesn't matter what you say, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You've got to go with what the situation on the ground is.
Fauci also warns that once this crisis fades, we could see a second cycle.
What we're starting to see now in the southern hemisphere countries is that we're having cases that are appearing as they go into their winter season. And if, in fact, they have a substantial outbreak, it will be inevitable that we need to be prepared that we'll get a cycle around the second time.
Infections are climbing in South America with more than 1,000 cases in Brazil, Chile, and Ecuador. South Africa has 700 confirmed infections.
Meantime, Japan is seeing an increase in cases as well, and that sent stocks in Asia lower overnight. Here with details is Bloomberg's Juliet Sally in our Singapore bureau. Good morning, Juliet.
Good morning, Nathan and Karen. Japanese equities were the hardest hit as consumer discretionary stocks slumped almost 8% as Japan moved a step closer toward declaring a state of emergency. Stocks here in Singapore fell after first quarter GDP contracted the most in a decade. In China, the CSI 300 fell 0.7%, and Korean equities reversed earlier gains in Seoul to close down by 1%. In Singapore, Juliet Sarli, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Juliet, thank you. Again, futures are lower. S&P futures down 36 points, Dow futures down 234, and NASDAQ futures down about 95. The 10-year Treasury up 18/32, yield 0.80%. The yield on the 2-year 0.31%, and the 30-year yields at 1.36%. Straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news, and this is Bloomberg.
Okay, Karen, thank you. It's 5:07 on Wall Street, and Michael Barr is here with more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. State officials in New York are bracing for what they warn could be a large peak in coronavirus cases several weeks from now. New York City, the epicenter of the national outbreak, already has nearly 18,000 infections and nearly 200 deaths. Mayor Bill de Blasio says we shouldn't cling to false hope after President Trump suggested the country could be fully reopened by Easter.
I believe April's going to be tougher than March, and I think at this point May could be even tougher than April, and people need to be ready for that.
But de Blasio says there is one piece of good news.
Supplies have come in from the federal government, from the state government, and elsewhere that have certainly improved our situation this week. That'll help us get into next week. That is a ray of light for sure. But we know we're going to have giant challenges ahead in terms of producing enough hospital space, enough personnel who are trained to help us in this crisis, and that ongoing challenge with equipment and supplies.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says the state needs nearly 3 times the number of hospital beds it currently has and tens of thousands of respirators. In a news conference, Cuomo said patients may have to share ventilators.
We're exploring splitting, where one ventilator could do 2 patients. Italy has had to do this because they were forced to do it.
Meanwhile, New Jersey's health commissioner said yesterday that the state is on track for the kind of viral surge New York is experiencing. New Jersey has more than 4,400 infections, up from 3,675 on Tuesday. At least 62 people have died from coronavirus in New Jersey. One of Texas's largest county jails is facing a potential coronavirus outbreak 5 Dallas County inmates have now tested positive for COVID-19, with other test results pending. Joe Biden rejected any idea of an April debate with Bernie Sanders, signaling Wednesday that he views the Democratic nominating contest as essentially over. Biden, during a live-streamed news conference, says, "I think we've had enough debate." Sanders, however, responded later that he wanted to face off because it would help inform Americans as they confront the coronavirus. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
All right, Michael, thanks. It's 5:09 on Wall Street. Time now for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Good morning, Rob Bushka.
Good morning, Nathan. Met star and one of the young faces of the game, Pete Alonso, took time Wednesday to thank doctors and first responders to the coronavirus with a heartfelt message that we can all find ways to appreciate.
Pete Alonso from the New York Mets. This disease has definitely grown my appreciation for some simple things in life. For example, like I play baseball, and that's taken away from me. It's not just a job for me, it's a joy. I feel like a little kid out there when I play. There's a line that Jerry Seinfeld said, it's like baseball is a vessel for us to cope with our everyday lives. This disease did, especially for me, it put a lot in perspective, and I have a new appreciation for baseball, but a new appreciation for life. Thank you to all the people in the medical world working around the clock, dedicating a ton of time, putting yourselves. I hope this video finds a lot of people well. As always, let's go Mets.
Alonso's not alone. Lakers star LeBron James did the same, supporting UCLA healthcare workers. And internationally, soccer icon Zlatan Ibrahimovic and NBA star Steph Curry, they're expressing direct support, putting their dollars behind medical professionals during this time of need. This comes on the heels of Brooklyn Nets guard Kyrie Irving donating to Feeding America earlier in the week as the country and world continues to battle through the pandemic. And NFL news, the Jets loading up on inside linebackers. The latest is former Raven Patrick Onwuasu. He signed a one-year deal. He made 61 tackles last year, had 3 sacks. He spent most of the year weak side linebacker after struggling early to replace C.J. Mosley. The Jets now have 6 inside linebackers on the roster. That's your NBC Bloomberg Sports Update. Nathan?
Okay, Rob, thank you. And the decision to delay the Tokyo Olympics to next year means taxpayers and sponsors will likely fork over billions of additional dollars just as the global economy slumps. In December, Japan's organizing committee said the event would cost $12 billion, the bulk of which is covered by them and the Tokyo metropolitan government. The Nikkei newspaper says the delay will trigger an additional $2.7 billion in costs. This is Bloomberg.
Message and data rate may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Life. It's a funny old game, isn't it?
1 minute you're on top, the next, you need all the help you can get.
Yeah, later, yeah.
So make sure you're there for those around you. Don't just be a spectator. Be a supporter. Bleed for life. Join us at blood.co.uk.
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
A change is coming. Millions of people across the UK are realising that if their broadband's out of contract, they could be out of pocket. So it's time to switch and save with Vodafone Superfast Broadband for £22.95 a month. Join the Great British Broadband switch today. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
18-month contract subject to credit check. Superfast 1, 73% of customers receive sync speeds above 35 megabits per second. Source Ofcom fairer pricing. Price may change during your contract. See vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
Hot, tasty, and ready in seconds. That's how most people like their coffee. I know because I used to have a coffee van outside London Bridge Station. Now I test coffee machines in the Which Test Lab. We find the machines that make the right amount of hot, tasty coffee time and time again. And the ones that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your home. Ah, perfect. Which.co.uk. Our tests find you the best.
Conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Heidi Stroud-Watts.
As the coronavirus continues to spread, schools remain closed around the globe. To help deal with this, Sydney-based Open Learning is providing online classes to those affected. The company has now partnered with Alibaba Cloud to get high-speed access to students in mainland China. Joining us now is Open Learning Limited founder and group CEO, Adam Bremo. Adam, great to have you with us. Talk to me about what I'm imagining is just a surge in demand and how the company has been coping with that.
Open Learning's focus is to be one of the leading lifelong learning platforms in the world. We have about 1.7 million students globally. We work with education providers, but really our goal is to deliver high quality online education with the education providers, universities, colleges, corporates. But yeah, we're seeing quite strong interest at the moment across the sector from institutions that have been impacted both positively and negatively from the crisis.
Have you seen kind of interest in this part of the world, and what are schools doing to get a coherent, consistent online curriculum going?
Yeah, so we are seeing a number of challenges across the sector. Our focus has historically been on universities, colleges, vocational education, but we are also seeing interest from schools who are trying to transition their curriculum online.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. European stocks are retreating along with U.S. stock index futures and most Asian shares as investors look past stimulus packages to the mounting human impact of the coronavirus outbreak. Government bonds and the yen are advancing. The stocks Europe 600 is dropping, led by energy companies and miners after 2 days of gains. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are down 47 points. Dow futures down 332. NASDAQ futures down 131. The DAX in Germany is down 2.1%. 10-year Treasury up 21/30 seconds, yield 0.79%. Yield on the 2-year 0.30%. NYMEX crude oil down 2.9% or 71 cents at $23.78 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.6% or $9.30 at $16.25 an ounce. The euro 1.0942 against the dollar. British pound 1.1935. And the yen is at 109.87. The VIX at 66.20. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. The Senate has unanimously passed the $2 trillion COVID-19 rescue package. The vote last night was 96-0, 4 Republican senators were absent due to self-quarantines. The measure now goes to the House. The U.S. death toll from the coronavirus topped 1,000, according to a Johns Hopkins tally. Worldwide cases have reached more than 472,000. New York State officials are bracing for what they say will be major peaks in the number of people sick with coronavirus. And New Jersey State Health Commissioner says the state is on track for the kind of viral surge in New York. New Jersey has more than 4,400 infections. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. It is 5:19 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. Let's bring in Kit Jukes now. He's the Chief FX Strategist at Societe Generale. Good to talk with you this morning, Kit, as we assess the potential impact of this unprecedented stimulus package that was passed by the Senate last night. What do you think it'll be in terms of dollar outflows? Do you think we'll start to see more movement out of the greenback as a safe haven?
Yeah, I think the package itself is very helpful, and we've seen the same thing around the world. What the Fed has done in terms of trying to reliquify the global financial system with enough dollars that everyone can get hold of them is to take hold. So imagine an engine that's seized up. The Fed has thrown incredible amounts of oil at it, and I think that system works. If the global economy could follow, that would be nice too, and that's what the fiscal moves are there for. But as that happens, the Japanese who have need for dollars have been able to get it through the swap line the Fed has with the Bank of Japan, and as the anomalies in the market as a result of that ease away, for example, the yen's up 1% this morning, and it's all sorting itself out. So we will get back to some place from which we look at foreign exchange as being, whose economy is getting hit hardest, who's got different monetary and fiscal policies, and all the kind of regular stuff we did long ago. I can't remember when.
Yeah, it's so hard to remember when things were regular. I mean, that's the question that so many market participants are asking, is when we will start to see normal. I mean, can you game out any kind of expectation given what the what the movement is with the virus itself and the fact that it's keeps changing?
There's levels of normal, right? Normal economically, only when all the world's major economies are on a downtrend in terms of the death toll. I would have thought, the human calamity is just there in front of us, and we have to get through that. The lockdowns that we have in our economy, where so many people are working from home, we have to get past that. I think you can get the financial system kind of moving before then, where things normalize a little bit more. As money flows around the system. I think that's something they do well. I mean, that said, markets are not operating anything like normally in terms of if you phoned up your local broker and a lot of assets and asked for a price in something, you wouldn't want to have too much to do unless it suited him. Volatility's choppy, the market's thin. It's very difficult to book trading tickets when the salesman's in his living room and the trader's somewhere else, and you can imagine the mess. But things like the futures market work better. So all of that I think will get sorted first, isn't. And then you today obviously have this the first of the weekly claims numbers that's going to kind of bring the first round of people claiming for unemployment benefit really full and frontal, and then we're going to start seeing how that pans out, and that's just the inevitable economic bust we've all been hit by.
Yeah, when you talk about the new normal, it's very interesting to see that Chairman Powell is going to be making an appearance on a national morning news show later today. What would you expect to hear? What do you want to hear from the chairman after the extraordinary moves that the central bank has made?
I know to reassure people that the dollar is still worth a dollar, that you can get hold of dollars, that the bank isn't going to run out of cash, that the system will work, that that the system is clearing properly, and that I have the plumbing. If he is the financial plumber, and if he turns around and says, I can make this plumbing problem work, it's not the drains are not the problem. The problem is the virus, and I think he'll reassure that. I have to say, the Fed has done brilliant job in the last couple of weeks. The Fed and the ECB have both done so well. So, but I would expect, on TV to reassure, on TV so that regular folks who aren't in financial markets get to feel the way I do about what a good job they've done recently.
And in just the last few seconds we have here, the G20 is holding a conference call later this morning. Is a more coordinated fiscal response something that's still needed?
It would have. It's almost as I would settle for big fiscal response before I got coordinated fiscal response. If I had to choose, but yeah, it would be nice to have more coordination. Look, over here in Europe, I would love to have the Europeans coordinate with something that that was joined up across the whole Eurozone. That would make a huge difference, but that's separate from the G20. I think coordination looks good, but bazookas look bigger. I think.
Kit Jukes, thanks for this. Much appreciated. Kit Jukes is Chief FX Strategist at Societe Generale. And as we continue to assess the impact of the bazooka making its way through Capitol Hill, S&P futures are lower by 41 points. Dow futures down 269. NASDAQ futures a loss of 110 points. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The U.S. Senate has approved a $2 trillion rescue plan to respond to the economic and health crisis caused by the coronavirus pandemic, putting pressure on the Democratic-led House to pass the bill quickly and send it to the desk of President Donald Trump. It includes an unprecedented injection of loans, tax breaks, and direct payments for major corporations and individual taxpayers to help the U.S. economy get through the abrupt shutdown. The House is scheduled to vote on the legislation tomorrow. Stocks posted a second straight day of gains on Wall Street yesterday, but markets were declining this morning as investors looked past the stimulus packages and at the growing human toll. Amazon will keep a Kentucky warehouse closed longer than it had originally planned after 3 workers tested positive for COVID-19. Employees learned from an automated call that the facility would remain closed for stepped-up cleaning measures. Workers will get their regular pay and will be contacted when Amazon decides on a reopening date. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize-change.
Coronavirus is affecting us all. During this difficult time, we're helping critical workers to make essential journeys by public transport. So, from Monday the 23rd of March, TfL will be operating a gradually reduced service on our network. Some stations will be closed so that we can keep key stations open. Night Tube and Night Overground services have already stopped running, but our extensive night bus service will continue. The Waterloo and City Line is now closed. We will keep you updated as our services change. Search TfL.
Mayday, Mayday, this is Red Dwarf. Our engines are dead and we're being sucked into a black hole. Can anyone hear me? Over? The only thing that's over is us, Crichton. We're finished.
Guys, relax. I've got smart breakdown with the AA. It sends them your vehicle's fault data, so they should know what's wrong before they even get here.
I don't believe it.
What, that they'll already know what's wrong?
No, that you're actually capable of something useful.
The future of breakdown, today. The AA. Drive smart. See the AA.com for details.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night. And somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here. Testing mattresses in the Witch Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom. Witch.co.uk. Our tests find you the best.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care about each other, about our planet, about creating a better world for everyone and becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Apply by the 31st of March for a chance to win your first year in halls. Visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
Imagine winning 10 grand. Yes! With Set for Life, you could win 10 grand every month for 30 years. Get in! Amazing! Woo! Yes! Sweet! Unbelievable!
Play Thursday, and you could make every month amazing with Set for Life and the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Prize may be capped. Rules, procedures, and game-specific rules apply. Players must be 16 or over.
On this week's On the Media, for years, U.S. preppers have invested time and money getting ready to tackle imaginary doomsday scenarios. So
you can't make up a story anymore. It doesn't work. We've got coronavirus, and it's not hypothetical. It's actually happening.
Don't miss this week's On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast from WNYC Studios on TuneIn today.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
And it's 5:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Karen Moscow.
I'm Nathan Hager. Bloomberg Daybreak brought to you by BNY Mellon's Pershing. Learn why the world's most sophisticated advisory firms and broker-dealers rely on Pershing to help them improve profitability, create efficiency, attract talent, and manage risk at Pershing.com.
We're just about 4 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. The U.S. Senate has approved a $2 trillion plan to stem the economic fallout from COVID-19. The legislation passed unanimously just before midnight and now heads to the House. Here with details on the package is Bloomberg's Anne-Marie Hordern.
First for the big business, $500 billion for these big corporations, including airlines. But you have to ban buybacks, limit executive bonuses. Then we go on to the small businesses. They got $350 billion in loans. This is a sector that desperately needs it, but originally they wanted cash injections, so didn't get exactly everything they wanted. And then, of course, we're seeing direct checks to Americans, but this is for lower and middle income. So if you make over $99,000, you're not going to get it.
A small business is in dire need of this stimulus package, but there's concern the help could get there too late. Here with details is Bloomberg's John Tucker, who joins us live. Good morning, John.
Yeah, Nathan, the $350 billion in loans will be administered by the Small Business Administration, which isn't known for its speed. The SBA's Disaster Loan Assistance Portal this morning reads the following. The portal is undergoing maintenance and will not be available during this maintenance period. It's receiving up to 30,000 phone calls a day, a number that's expected to surge to 60,000. I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. Global investors appear to be selling the news. Here with more is Bloomberg's Richard Jones.
From a markets perspective, we're kind of seeing that buy the rumor, sell the fact price action. There's a lot of Asian equity markets trading lower today, as are U.S. and European equities. It does feel like further equity upside is going to be harder to come by now that the fiscal stimulus packages are out there already.
And right now, S&P futures are down 1.7%, while the Europe Stock 600 is down 1.7% as well.
Next, we get the weekly reading on jobless claims. It could be
is on the real side, on the medical side. One has to just get more certainty, better data on a supply of beds, supply of ventilators, and the sharing of hospital beds across straight lines in the US, for instance. You can see that the two agencies, fiscal and monetary, have done pretty much what you would have expected them to do, but that has not been matched by a corresponding quality of activities on the healthcare side. And I think once you get some good information there and some better news, things will pick up. In terms of, Tom just talked about rates, in terms of rates, I think you're right. They're seeing through the stimulus the outlook for economies over the next sort of 2 years is really very pessimistic, despite all the stimulus. The stimulus is just kind of picking up where consumption fell short. But if you look ahead, you see, for instance, that we have to fund an additional 3 to 4, maybe even $5 trillion worth of debt. And that's going to be added to debt to GDP ratios. So leverage has gone way up, public sector leverage has gone up. And also, while after the big decline in Q2, you'll see a bit of an increase in Q1, but that's all driven by the fiscal expenditure, and that will not be maintained in 2021. So we are quite pessimistic as far as the outlook for 2021 is concerned. It'll probably require continuous stimulus just to prevent us from falling into recession. I think that's sort of what's coming through in conversations with investors and finding its way into rates.
David, I have an important question, and it goes back to a Deutsche Bank conference I went to in Washington years and years ago. I believe John Taylor of Stanford spoke, and Dr. Larian at the time being at PIMCO, and that is in emerging markets, when things happen, they happen suddenly. Is that one of the little things that's out there in this crisis, that we could see an EM unraveling as we did certain times in the 1990s?
Yes, you could, and it's driven by the virus, right? In the sense that we see a very significant outflow of funds, and much more, in fact, than we saw during the financial crisis in 2008, and that is attributed to the uncertainty about what the virus is going to do in countries like Indonesia, India, whether India is going to be successful in this lockdown, and the rest around the world. So it's very much we have to see over the next month or two next month how well the EM countries deal with the virus. But as a precautionary move, you see all this capital coming out now. And yes, there is definitely potential for, because of fragilities, interaction between the exchange rate, monetary policy, domestic economic performance, there is a real risk of a more significant decline and crises coming from the EM sector. Much more than I think from the industrial country sectors.
David Folkers-Landau with us, and we will continue with Dr. Folkers-Landau here. Right now, with a busy schedule, Scott Teal with us with PIMCO, running all of their fixed income shop worldwide. Scott, thank you so much for having time with us. As you know, the economic data can be predicted, but it's amazing how you can see markets react off news. At 8:30 Wall Street time, we will see the most historic number in American labor market history, this huge jump in jobless claims widely presumed. How will the fixed income market react to that statistic?
Well, Tom, I think it's interesting. I think obviously the downdraft in economic activity, because the world is at a standstill, is going to be remarkable, right? And I think that investors have already begun to process that, and I think the reaction to the fiscal stimulus that the U.S. is delivering, which in many respects gets to the unprecedented labor market support, right, in terms of benefits, in terms of coverage, including the gig economy. I mean, I think that the numbers that we see now are expected to be, very negative, right? And we're expecting, potentially kind of year-on-year numbers to be kind of minus 20 to 25%, across the U.S. as we go into the next quarter. I think for investors, though, the signpost is not about the information that is coming, because clearly the shock to the economy is gigantic. It's about the duration of the slowdown, of the shutdown, right, Tom? That is the thing that that's the economic signpost that investors are looking for, is the duration of the slowdown, because the fiscal stimulus is obviously gigantic, but if the shutdown were to be multiple quarters, clearly more is going to be needed.
Scott, how do you try and figure out how long the shutdown is? I don't know. I'm not sure how you model it at this point. Do you go for the Chinese model? Do you assume that you can start testing people to see whether they can go back to work if they've had it and are immune?
Yeah, it's a very difficult thing, because obviously it's a unprecedented shock, and one of the things that doesn't work is economic models that dealt with normal cyclical processes, right? So this is not obviously a normal cycle. This is a gigantic shock to the global economy, and so it is very difficult to model how the recovery will pan out. But one thing we would say is that the more severe the shutdown, the more likely the shorter it is, and thus the recovery is larger, right? And so the idea that you shut it down entirely and then recover. China model being a very applicable sample set would obviously be the most beneficial from an economic perspective.
Scott, where do you see treasuries at the end of the year?
Well, I mean, I think it's difficult. I would say that, it is unlikely that they are materially higher than where we are today. In the sense that I do believe that, part of the whole policy response here, Francine, is going to be that rates have to stay in a relatively controlled range, right? In other words, if Treasury rates were to increase as a result of the fiscal spending, then that would in fact be a negative feedback loop from financial conditions and offset some of the work that we're doing, right? And so I can't see them materially higher because in some respects, implicit or explicit, the Fed is going to be, exercising yield curve control here, right? That's clearly part of what's happening. So I would say, they could be here, they could be lower, and that's going to depend on the economics and the virus. But materially higher, I don't see it.
Scott, one final question before you move on to your PIMCO day. First of all, you need a massive victory lap. No one saw this pandemic coming, but you really called for a more than cautious 2020 and 2021. What's changed is a certain body of people out there are actually worried about inflation due to all this fiscal stimulus. And that leads to the PIMCO concept from Mr. Gross of financial repression. How repressed are we going to be if and when we get higher inflation?
Well, I mean, I think, Tom, what we have to keep in mind here, right, is that the packages are designed to address the shortfall in the economy, right? So let's put the numbers into perspective because I think it's important there. So we would estimate that, again, given a baseline scenario that is kind of a median forecast for economic downturn and then reemergence towards the middle of the end of the year, that the income shortfall is going to be roughly, in the U.S. economy, is roughly $1.1 trillion. And so the stimulus is obviously going to address, it has to be more than the actual shortfall to address, obviously, the longer-term implications. And so what I think, concerns about inflation is something I think for far into the future, right? What we're trying to do is to get the economy reemerging after being effectively shut down. And so I understand that you look at fiscal spending and you say, okay, well, look, the borrowing cost has to go up, the yield curve has to steepen, rates have to go higher. I think part of that will be managed by the central bank by keeping rates, as I just mentioned, at a level that's consistent with the financial conditions that they want to see present. Inflation, I think, is something that we should think about, but not in the foreseeable future, right? Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to reignite the economy, right? So we're not trying to overinflate it, right?
Scott Teal, thank you so much. Head of all fixed income at PIMCO. Greatly appreciate the time this morning on this historic day. Those jobless claim numbers out in less than 3 hours with BlackRock. Excuse me, it was a mental moment there, which you're allowed to have, given the tensions that are out there. We thank Scott Teal of BlackRock. This is the kind of conversations we're trying to bring you. David Folkert's Landau with us as well. We'll drive forward the conversation to that important jobless claims number. We'll do that with Ellen Zentner of Morgan Stanley. She and her team have really been quite cautious on that linkage of GDP growth and back into the labor economy. Please stay with us. In London, in New York, this is Bloomberg. Good morning.
You met on an app. Delete it.
Why?
He's the one. I see something else. A star with 3 points. You're in a Mercedes.
We wish.
Wish granted. With 4 models starting under $37,000, there could be a Mercedes-Benz in your very near future at the spring event. Lease the A220 sedan for just $349 a month with credit toward your first month's payment at your local Mercedes-Benz dealer.
Incline's going high today. We are burning calories now.
The higher the incline, the higher the calorie burn.
We're gonna climb up right into the clouds. Absolutely stunning. Wow, just take a moment to look at that. Nicely done. Beautiful job today. That hike was incredible. It doesn't get any better than that.
Sure, Principal is a financial company. But think of us as a protect your family as it grows company. A put enough away for college company. And a take care of your employees company. We're a help you ride the ups and downs of the market company. And when it's time to retire, we're a we've been guiding you toward this all along company. Think of us as all these companies and more. Principal, retirement, investments, insurance.
For farmers here, this is our life's work. But when a recall happens, perfectly good food goes to waste. Now we've got a way around that.
Looks good. I mean, we're on target.
Blockchain on the IBM cloud helps pinpoint a problem anywhere, from farm to shelf. It's used by some of the biggest retailers everywhere. A nice wedge. So more food ends up on your table.
Is that Daddy's lettuce?
And less food goes to waste.
The longer the virus stays, the more expensive it will be.
The longer we stay out, the harder it is. I think we have all the firepower we need, and we will use it.
That will create up to an additional $4 trillion, if needed, to support American business and American workers.
We'll provide $2,000 a month for the next 4 months for workers who lose their income.
Other instruments will be made available if needed.
Everything gets a second seat, a back seat, and all hands are on deck on dealing with COVID-19.
Our main concern now, as I said, is no longer the credit agency's opinion of us, but the survival of our people.
Some of the voices that we've seen across the Bloomberg world in the last couple days. Francine Lacroix in London. In West London, I'm Tom Keene on the edge of Central Park here in a very changed Manhattan. And with us, David Folkerts-Landau, head of Olive Research, and of course, the most interesting economist with a small bank in Germany, Deutsche Bank. Francine, what I've got here is my support for the Italian economy, which is the advantage of being home. This is Lavazza coffee, fresh brewed out of Italy.
Yeah.
And it is way better.
This is the difference between your floor manager and my, Tom. I get a thermos.
You know,
yeah, you get fresh coffee. I get a thermos, and I have to deal with that.
Killing it here this morning. David Folkerts-Landau with us. And David, just give us an anecdote of the 100, the 400, the thousands of people under your umbrella at Deutsche Bank. How is the city, how is the German, how is the New York, Wall Street, Deutsche Bank doing working out of their homes?
Well, Tom, all of our 400 people, almost all of them, with the exception of maybe 10 or so, are working from homes, and it works very well. I think the connectivity among the people is excellent. The information flow, the global connectedness, and of course the connectedness to our clients. We have heard nothing but praise from the way it's all been working out. Fortunately, we have not had any cases among research people, and let's hope it stays that way. So, as I was saying to Francine earlier, so from my point of view, this has increased, may even have increased our productivity because we have sort of more time to focus and as I said, very close to clients and good feedback. So it's working well.
David, Deutsche Bank's had world-class oil coverage for years. I think of the great Adam Szymanski with you years ago onto his public duties, I believe with IEA as well. Give us how the Russia-Saudi Arabia tension, how that folds into this collapse in a global GDP.
Well, it makes it a lot more difficult for the Saudis, obviously, and they cannot have expected that there would be such a tremendous drop-off in global demand for their principal product, and it shows up in the valuation of Aramco and in their own budgets. So I think this was just very bad timing and a bad coincidence for them, and they're obviously suffering from it. I do not believe that is going to make them change their strategic outlook and enter into negotiations with the Russians to arrive at a reasonable outcome. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. But it has made things a lot worse for them.
David, you know what I wanted to ask you about actually was the price of oil. I don't know, this is part because of the demand, of course, is collapsing because of coronavirus, but this is also a fight between the Saudis and the Russians, and it's about market share and market supply. How, I don't know whether at the margin, a very low oil price adds to the shock for the world economy or could actually benefit it.
Well, it impacts countries very differentially in the sense that there are some big winners and there's some big losers, obviously. My sense is that by and large, over the medium term, for the industrial countries, it's for the developed world, it's a good thing, obviously. But there are some serious issues within the emerging markets which compounds the problems that we talked about earlier on in the hour, as far as they are concerned. So you have to very differentiated outlook depending on whether you're a big importer or a big exporter.
All right, David, thanks so much, as always, for your time. David Forex-Landau there of Deutsche Bank. In the meantime, this is what we're looking at in your markets. Now, we'll have a full market roundup. Today, a lot of the market participants focusing on the epidemic, the pandemic, and the number of infected and deaths worldwide. This is despite some extra stimulus put in by a lot of the central banks. Then, if you're a Bloomberg user, and we sincerely hope you are, if you're watching us from home, you can go onto TV Go. It's a function. You can follow Tom and I. You can follow all of our other anchors and newsmakers, and then you can watch all of our interviews. And if you have a question for one of our guests, just type directly underneath the video screen, ask a question to the guest, and then Tom and I will ask it on your behalf. This is Bloomberg.
Another day of risk off across the financial markets. We bring you special coverage of all the price action and implications here on Bloomberg Television.
No time to read? The Blinkist app gives you the key ideas from the world's best nonfiction books in just 15 minutes. And with audio, you can listen and learn on the go. Fit reading into your life with Blinkist. Visit Blinkist.com or download the Blinkist app now. Your people are spread out, but decision-making can't come to a grinding halt just because everyone is remote. It's now more of a challenge than ever to get a common operating picture of your business. No matter where you or your people are in the world, Bluescape is the only solution able to provide your remote leadership with a view of all the critical data and content surrounding your business in a secure, hybrid cloud environment. Bluescape. Together from anywhere.
Jim and Joanne are here to pick up the same prescription. They both know the system is not on their side. They both know drug costs are out of control. But one of them is taking back control with GoodRx. Next. So while he's paying that much, even with his insurance, she's paying this much just by using GoodRx. Use GoodRx to compare prices at pharmacies in your area and stop paying too much for your prescriptions. Download the free app today and take back control.
Commodity investing is more than buying gold and oil. From coffee and corn to cattle and natural gas, many sectors drive the commodity markets. And the Bloomberg Commodity Index covers them all. With exposure across 23 traded commodities, Bloomberg is the standard for diversification in commodity markets. With full transparency, measure and monitor your investment performance against the benchmark used by commodity professionals globally. More than gold and oil, the Bloomberg Commodity Index.
is Bloomberg Surveillance. I'm Vivian Hurtado. Let's get your Bloomberg Business Flash. JP Morgan's equity derivatives traders are making a haul in those violent price swings. Bloomberg has learned this year they've generated roughly $1.5 billion in revenue. That's almost what JP Morgan reported from all equity markets businesses in last year's first Q. It's a snapshot of the way the coronavirus crisis is shifting fortunes on Wall Street. And we end with Ford, the automaker, becoming the largest so-called fallen angel, S&P cutting Ford to junk. This at a time when the coronavirus is rocking the car industry. S&P downgrading Ford's credit rating one notch to BB+. It may cut it further. Ford shutting its factories around the world. S&P says that's putting the automaker under immense pressure. And that's your Bloomberg Business Flash. Francine Tom.
Viviana, thanks so much. And that Ford item that Viviana spoke about is a huge, huge deal. Just an American symbol to see Ford Motor Company of Dearborn cut to a junk rating as well. The data right now is real simple. Yeah, it's a little soggy, and yeah, Euro does better than yen, and there's all these indicators in that. But what you need to know is the data is all wrapped around 8:30 this morning and a jobless claims number that the survey has from 1.5 million to 1.6 million. Maybe that's why we see a two-year yield coming in a little bit. Francine, the two-year yield, a lower yield this morning, that's key for me.
Yeah, Tom, I'm really interested in the jobless data. Of course, you wonder how many people will have already been impacted by the coronavirus, given it's only 2 to 3 weeks that we felt it. So it's something that maybe will accelerate in terms of importance in the coming weeks and months. European stocks declining, of course, investors looking at the stimulus package, but actually also looking at the human impact of the coronavirus outbreak. We had some pretty difficult figures out of Europe yesterday. And just a reminder, European sovereign debt actually rose after the ECB announced it will scrap limits on bond purchases, Tom.
Very good. Coming up, we have a conversation with a gentleman from JP Morgan on the allocation forward. David Kelly joining us, the economist, the strategist of JP Morgan. This is Bloomberg.
Life isn't a straight line, and sometimes you can find yourself heading in a new direction. But when you're with Fidelity, a partner who makes sure every step is clear, there's nothing to stop you from moving forward.
At Market Access, we created open trading, and you created the open market, a market with over 85% of U.S. market share in e-trading credit volume that lets you talk to over 1,500 global credit trading institutions at once, helping you deliver best execution, saving liquidity takers over $163 million in transaction costs in 2018. With Market Access, you're not just in the open market, you're in the market.
I had no idea how much I was spending on monthly subscriptions. Truebill showed me exactly how many I had and made it so easy to cancel all of them.
I was able to recognize things I was wasting money on every month. The amount of things it can do for you, like canceling services, negotiating bills, having all your accounts in one view all together.
Truebill saved me major cash. It's all just organized in a way that makes sense.
Anyone who is having trouble keeping track of their finances or subscriptions needs this app.
Being on the wrong side of the market is the worst thing that can happen to an investor. Well before coronavirus hit global markets, VectorVest was on it. A first warning on January 17th. On February 14th, another warning of a bearish divergence. And on February 21st, amid flashing red warnings, we also recommended 5 contra ETFs that made 54% in 2 weeks. Stop suffering through painful market sell-offs. Test drive VectorVest, 30 days, under $10. Before you invest, check VectorVest.
Welcome customers on mobile, online, in-store, and beyond with Adyen, the single payments platform for unified commerce. Adyen.
With teams working remotely, data critical to the operations of your business is becoming more disparate. No matter where you or your people are in the world, Bluescape is the only solution able to securely visualize all the critical data and content surrounding your business through a single pane of glass. As a corporate leader, Bluescape enables you to see everything together and make better, more informed decisions faster. Bluescape. Together from anywhere.
Fuel, corn, livestock, precious metals. Commodities are everywhere, and so is Bloomberg. Bloomberg commodity indices deliver leading benchmarks for true diversification. Adding commodity exposure can help hedge against inflation and diversify your stock and bond portfolios. With full data transparency and broad distribution, the Bloomberg suite of commodity indices is your measure for the commodity markets. With Bloomberg, you've got the markets covered.
This morning, it is a single number, a statistic unimaginable. At 8:30, the single worst report on job loss in the history of America. In this hour, the pandemic, this global recession, and the response of our leaders. David Kelly joins from JP Morgan. Washington, well, we have a problem. The Senate responds, but how fast can they get the money to the bartenders, the Uber drivers, and the wartime duty nurses coast to coast? And in New York, Ken Langone has 300 beds at NYU. There are 23 beds in Greenwich Village. On the road to JFK, Queens is hit hardest. Is your town the next New York City? Good morning, everyone, from New York City. This is Bloomberg Surveillance in London. Francine Lacroix as well. Each day is different in this crisis. We'll get to the economics, the finance, the investment as well. Francine, what is so stunning with the windows cracked open on the island of Manhattan, the soft drone of sirens each and every moment of the entire day.
I know. Yeah, Tom, it's terrible. And, you know, a lot of us have looked at China with our colleagues that, of course, were in their apartments for many months, and then Italy. And it seems that the pattern, now we've been looking at curves, and of course, we're trying to flatten the curve by making people isolate and stay at home. But the pattern is very similar from country to country with a laggard of 1, 2, 3 weeks. And so you can look back at what happened in Italy with the sirens, and of course, more resources really needed for the heroes, nurses and doctors.
Well, we've seen a lot here, and of course, Bloomberg Graphics with a great chart out on the number of beds in the 5 boroughs of New York City. I really learned a lot from that chart. And also, of course, we're seeing from the New York Times and the FT great log charts showing the pandemic. And all you need to know in America, folks, is New York is a state, not as a city. New York is on the outside and the wrong side of the envelope of all of these different geographies affected by this pandemic. We need an update with our news in New York City. Here's Viviana Hurtado.
Tom, Francine, we begin with the largest economic rescue in U.S. history. The Senate approving a $2 trillion package. It's aimed at stopping the financial damage caused by the coronavirus outbreak. The vote
in order to, insure yourself, if I can put it like that, against what's happening in the global, financial markets specifically, and B, potentially take advantage if that's even possible?
Well, I mean, at a company level, we're standing here with a very, very strong balance sheet and a high level of financial resilience, which I think, it serves us well and puts us in good stead. And, one of the things that as a really long-term investor we try to do is the deeper the crisis, the calmer we try to be. So spending an awful lot of time looking around for quality stocks, opportunities that are emerging where clearly the prospect of return is at an extreme. And I think the other thing we're looking to work out is by talking to our clients, actually make sure we can satisfy their needs, because these levels of economic activity, these levels of volatility, these levels of interest rates, client demands are changing and are going to be changing, I think, quite dramatically relative to what they wanted in the past 5 years. So one of the things I think is opening up is a huge opportunity for active investors.
Do you think that moment is finally here? Why do you think that is going to be the case, Keith? Active managers, in some ways, are going to struggle as the market kind of gets whipped around all over the place, certainly at the moment, and it's going to be really hard to not get stopped out of positions. At what point do you think active kicks back in again?
I think active starts to kick back in. Literally as we speak, Guy. And if I look back and just take a step back from where we are, and you think about 17, 18, 19, 20, that has been a roller coaster in terms of investment return. And if all you've done is ridden the beta, the volatility in that, that's not been a great place to be. So I think by active, I don't think it's just about outperforming a benchmark. It's about delivering outcome-orientated solutions and looking to dampen the volatility that is clearly with us. And it's thinking about the impact of that volatility on the income returns that we deliver for people that are retiring, and also minimizing the risk per unit of capital on some of the large insurance and pension fund balance sheets. So I think there is opportunity, and I do think that new active will have its day, and will show that it can deliver good returns over the medium term.
Very curious on your thoughts on both monetary and the fiscal stimulus that you saw today. Is it enough to support the muni market? Do you like what you're seeing on both the monetary and the fiscal side of things?
Yeah, I think it's a good start, and I think a lot's priced into the market. I mean, basically what you've had over the past couple of weeks is a massive liquidity shock to the market that I think is now effectively pricing in a lot of different credit risk. I mean, so for example, if you just compress muni credit spreads back to where they averaged during the last recession, you could see as much in the 10-year part of the curve. You could see as much as kind of 6 to 9% excess returns. And so credit effects of all of this, which is probably going to ripple through the muni market for years. But the high grade part of the market, I think, is particularly attractive because of this, particularly in light of, I think, as you alluded to, you've got the federal government already coming to, it looks like they're coming to bear with $150 billion in stimulus.
We always need more time with you. That is Michael Zizas, strategist over at Morgan Stanley.
So we learned some really interesting information because obviously the other countries like China and others had been hit prior than we did. One of the things that was striking to me, and I just throw it out because it's something that we will face. We're not facing it now, but we will face. Our Chinese colleagues are very concerned because they went through the entire cycle of the curve to come down. And they have very, very few cases. But what they're starting to see as they're relaxing the constraints on travel, that they're getting imported cases. And they wanted to warn us that when we get successful, make sure you very carefully examine how you're going to release the constraints on inputs. So I know we're going to be successful in putting this under control, but I think we're going to have to remember we don't want to import cases in. That's the first thing for today. The second thing that was important is that it was something that Dr. Birx mentioned, and that is when you look at the inflection of the curves, we now have multiple different countries that have gone through various phases of their individual outbreaks. And you could learn something from them about where you are in your own outbreak. For example, when China went up, what happened is they just didn't turn around. They went from going to, I'll just take an arbitrary number, 500 new cases a day. The next day it was 1,000 cases, then 1,500, and then 2,000. But once the number of new cases each day starts to flatten out, that's when you get to that point where the inflection goes down. So what things we want to look for, the things that Dr. Birx had mentioned, that doesn't mean you declare victory when it does that, but you know you're at least on the way to where you want to go. And I think that's really very important. The third and final thing that I think gets back to the question that many of you in the audience have asked of us is about, would this possibly become a seasonal cyclic thing? And I've always indicated to you that I think it very well might. And the reason I say that is that what we're starting to see now in the Southern Hemisphere, in Southern Africa, and in the Southern Hemisphere countries is that we're having cases that are appearing as they go into their winter season. And if, in fact, they have a substantial outbreak, it will be inevitable that we need to be prepared that we'll get a cycle around the second time. What does that mean for us and what we're doing? It totally emphasizes the need to do what we're doing in developing a vaccine, testing it quickly, and trying to get it ready so that we'll have a vaccine available for that next cycle. In addition, to do the randomized controlled trials of drugs so that we will have a menu of drugs that we have shown to be effective and shown to be safe. Because I know we'll be successful in putting this down now, but we really need to be prepared for another cycle. And what we're doing, I believe, will prepare us well. Thank you.
I was going to start with the fact that we had this incredible two-day rally that at one point was the S&P's biggest two-day gain since 2008. But we're giving back a lot of that advance right now in the final minutes of this trading session. For the most part, would you say the initial extreme panic phase is over, or are we going to see these instances where we have big gains dissipate as we get towards the close because the wrong headline can trigger everyone to sell?
Scarlett, I think we've seen the primary low, the kind of shock and awe, forced selling, collapse of things that were levered up and people forced to sell with huge volume. And that occurred late last week, early this week. And now we're in this intermediary phase where we're going to have big up periods and big down periods. I don't think the coast is clear. I'd be a buyer on red days, if you will, and a trimmer on green days. So I don't think it's straight up. We've gained 30% of what we lost in the bear market just in these 2 days, which is quite a feat in a short amount of time. So expect choppiness, but maybe the low's in.
If you remember, we have been saying for more than 2 months now, this virus is public enemy number one. It's a dangerous virus. And we have been saying to the world that the
that you saw today, is it enough to support the muni market? Do you like what you're seeing on both the monetary and the fiscal side of things?
Yeah, I think it's a good start, and I think a lot's priced into the market. I mean, basically what you've had over the past couple of weeks is a massive liquidity shock to the market that I think is now effectively pricing in a lot of different credit risk. I mean, so for example, if you just compress muni credit spreads back to where they averaged during the last recession, you could see as much in the 10-year part of the curve. You could see as much as kind of 6 to 9% excess returns. And so I think it's totally valid, and we need to be talking about the downstream credit effects of all of this, which is probably going to ripple through the muni market for years. But the high-grade part of the market, I think, is particularly attractive because of this, particularly in light of, I think, as you alluded to, you've got the federal government already coming to, it looks like they're coming to bear with $150 billion in stimulus.
We always need more time with you. That is Michael Zizis, strategist over at Morgan Stanley.
So we learned some really interesting information because obviously the other countries like China and others had been hit prior that we did. One of the things that was striking to me, and I just throw it out because it's something that we will face. We're not facing it now, but we will face. Our Chinese colleagues are very concerned because they went through the entire cycle of the curve to come down. And they have very, very few cases. But what they're starting to see as they're relaxing the constraints on travel, that they're getting imported cases. And they wanted to warn us that when we get successful, make sure you very carefully examine how you're going to release the constraints on inputs. So I know we're going to be successful in putting this under control, but I think we're going to have to remember we don't want to import cases in. That's the first thing for today. The second thing that was important is that it was something that Dr. Birx mentioned, and that is when you look at the inflection of the curves, we now have multiple different countries that have gone through various phases of their individual outbreaks. And you could learn something from them about where you
greatest crisis of our generation. Bloomberg Green, solutions for a changing climate.
You're watching Bloomberg Surveillance. I'm Vivian Hurtado. Let's get your Bloomberg Business Flash. And we begin with the big Japanese automakers. Today, they're taking a hit to their credit ratings. Moody's downgrading Toyota, Honda, and Nissan. That comes a day after S&P cut Ford to junk. Goldman Sachs warning even a price war halt can't save oil from a huge glut. The lockdown of countries across the world causing an unprecedented collapse in oil demand. Goldman says any agreement to freeze or cut output will be too little, too late. And that's your Bloomberg Business Flash. Francine, Tom.
Viviana, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. I'm going to look at equities, bonds, currencies, commodities. Commodities a little soggy today as well, but I really want to frame it to this historic jobs number we're going to see at 8:30. Equities are weaker, and critically, even with the gyrations in credit, the 2-year yield has come in this morning. It's a lower yield, and there's two key points, dovetailed. A VIX still above 60, and also the Bloomberg Financial Conditions Index, which is key worldwide, is 6 standard deviations out. Francine?
Yeah, Tom, I'm looking at European stocks, so they're declining. I'm looking at government bonds. I'm looking at yen. Those are advancing. I would also point out, which we haven't mentioned yet, but I've been thinking about a lot, is that it's BOE decision day today. So we've heard a lot from Governor Bailey. He's been in charge for a little over a week. BOE watchers may, of course, gain some insight into the kind of analysis already being presented to policymakers. This is
customers access to precisely what they want when they need it the most. With Adyen, the payments platform that delivers convenience for all. Adyen, business, not boundaries.
Life isn't a straight line, and sometimes you can find yourself heading in a new direction. But when you're with Fidelity, a partner who makes sure every step is clear, there's nothing to stop you from moving forward.
With teams working remotely, data critical to the operations of your business is becoming more disparate. No matter where you or your people are in the world, Bluescape is the only solution.
Sofas. At DFS, they go through tough quality tests to make sure they're ready for whatever home life throws at them. Like this big sit test, the equivalent of sitting down on a sofa over 96,000 times. And with Spring Collection sofas up to half price, you know your sofa will pass the value for money test too. Can I stop yet? DFS, making every day more comfortable.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
And at 6:30 on Wall Street, good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We are just about 3 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. The U.S. Senate has approved a $2 trillion plan to stem the economic fallout from COVID-19. The legislation passed unanimously just before midnight and now heads to the House. Here with the details on the package is Bloomberg's Anne-Marie Hordern.
First for the big business, $500 billion for these big corporations, including airlines. But you have to ban buybacks, limit executive bonuses. Then we go on to the small businesses. They got $350 billion in loans. This is a sector that desperately needs it, but originally they wanted cash injections, so didn't get exactly everything they wanted. And then, of course, we're seeing direct checks to Americans, but this is for lower and middle income. So if you make over $99,000, you're not going to get it.
A small business is in dire need of this stimulus package, but there's concern the help could get there too late. Here with details is Bloomberg's John Tucker, who joins us live. Good morning, John.
Yeah, good morning, Nathan. The $350 billion in loans will be administered by the Small Business Administration, which isn't exactly known for speed. The SBA's disaster loan assistance portal this morning reads the following. The portal is undergoing maintenance and will not be available during this maintenance period. You're receiving up to 30,000 phone calls a day, a number that's expected to surge to 60,000. I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. Global investors appear to be selling the news. Here with more, Bloomberg's Richard Jones.
From a markets perspective, we're kind of seeing that buy the rumor, sell the fact price action. There's a lot of Asian equity markets trading lower today, as are U.S. and European equities. It does feel like further equity upside is going to be harder to come by now that the fiscal stimulus packages are out there already.
Right now, S&P futures are down 1%, and the Europe Stock 600 is currently down 1.25%.
Up next, we get the weekly reading on jobless claims, and it could be the worst report since the end of World War II. Economists forecast claims will hit 1.6 million. We get more from Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
Restaurants, retailers, manufacturers, you name it. Any way you slice it, it's going to be bad and persist. To complicate it all, computers at state unemployment agencies have been crashing as applications pour in. Phones tied up. In Colorado, this past Monday morning, the state labor department logged 186,000 attempts to reach its call center. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Vinny, thank you. And coming up in about 30 minutes from now, Jerome Powell makes a rare appearance on morning TV. The Fed chairman sits down for an interview on NBC's Today Show at 7:05 a.m. Wall Street time. Futures, again, moving lower this morning. S&P futures down about 26 points. Dow futures down 133. NASDAQ futures down 68. Straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. And this is Bloomberg.
All right, thank you, Karen. It's 6:33 on Wall Street, and this news update is brought to you by Land Rover. The Own the Adventure sales event is happening now until March 31st. Visit your tri-state area Land Rover retailer for details on the new Discovery Sport. Land Rover, above and beyond. Now here's Michael Barr.
Nathan, thank you very much. New York State officials are bracing for what they warn could be a large peak in coronavirus cases several weeks from now. New York City, the epicenter of the national outbreak, already has nearly 18,000 infections, and local officials warn the worst is yet to come. In a news conference, Mayor Bill de Blasio said that he is grateful for the several thousand ventilators the city has received from the federal government, but adds the city needs many, many more.
The goal for New York City is 15,000 ventilators. So the numbers that we have from this week gets us about a sixth of the way there, and that is important, but we got a lot more to do.
Doctors and nurses on the front line in New York City are pleading for help from federal and local officials. Dr. Colleen Smith works with the Department of Emergency Medicine at Elmhurst Hospital in Queens. She says the situation inside hospitals is becoming more dire by the day.
Unless we get help and supplies and ventilators in another week or two, we won't be able to take care of you.
Dr. Smith says one of the most terrifying parts for nurses is that they're treating the symptoms rather than the illness itself. Meanwhile, New Jersey's health commissioner says the state is on track for the kind of viral surge New York is experiencing. President Trump has signaled that he wants to reopen many businesses and public spaces by Easter, even as health officials warn it's too soon to abandon social distancing measures at that time. Dr. Anthony Fauci is the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases.
You've got to be realistic, and you've got to understand that you don't make the timeline. The virus makes the timeline. So you've got to respond in what you see happen. And if you keep seeing this acceleration, it doesn't matter what you say 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, You've got to go with what the situation on the ground is.
Planned Parenthood joined other abortion providers in suing Texas over moving to ban abortions during the coronavirus outbreak. One clinic owner says that it has already resulted in 150 cancellations. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg Nathan.
Thanks, Michael. 6:35 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update with Rob Bushka.
Good morning, Nathan. One of the rising stars of the game of baseball, Mets slugger Pete Alonso, took to social media displaying his gratitude to medical staffers, even identifying them personally by name for their hard work during the coronavirus in an uplifting video that later showed their individual reaction, saying, "This is pretty cool. Hard to believe today was scheduled to be opening day." Lakers star LeBron James did the same for the UCLA Medical Center, while global sports icons Steph Curry and soccer's Zlatan Ibrahimovic added financial support to the front lines as the world continues to battle and cope with this disease. Dropping in on Yankees spring training, Luke Voigt shares how the Bombers are staying in touch as they're anxious to get back to work.
We have our Madden League, so we got a big group chat going still, so we're in contact every day, and it's still fun. We're still managing to, keep our spirits up, and hopefully we get this figured out. We're back on the diamond here soon, but all the boys are good. We're staying locked in, and when time comes, we'll be ready to go.
Skipper Aaron Boone later added if baseball goes into November, they may want to consider neutral venues due to weather concerns to play the World Series. Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred found Wednesday that, quote, baseball will be back and will be part of the recovery, that nothing's off the table as the sport laid out a plan to return to work from the virus. He hopes the season can come back sometime in May, but the league will work first with experts to ensure everyone's safety. To the NFL, the Ravens continue to be a farm system feeding the Jets. A day after adding former Baltimore wide receiver and Tampa Bay Buccaneer Brashad Perriman, the list of ex-Ravens turned Jet continues to grow as they ink inside linebacker Patrick Onwuasu to a one-year deal. That's your NBC Bloomberg Sports Update. Nathan?
Thank you, Rob. 6:37 on Wall Street.
The following commentary is from Bloomberg Opinion.
Hoarding chloroquine won't cure coronavirus. I'm Max Neeson, a columnist for Bloomberg Opinion. We need treatments to help stem coronavirus, but urgency and evidence need to be balanced. President Trump's cheerleading of chloroquine and derivative hydroxychloroquine, older malaria drugs with a mixed record in COVID-19, is arguably dangerous. People are reportedly poisoning themselves via self-administration and hoarding it, making prudent evaluation more difficult. But sitting on medicines that might help is also a mistake. New vaccines are far away, and inaction has a human cost. A potential solution is innovation, not just in repurposing old drugs, but in how we test them. The sooner we generate more data, the better. Traditional trials are run without deviation from an initial plan and only analyzed once all data is ready. It's a robust but inflexible process. Newer adaptive trials can use data from ongoing experiments to count out treatments that aren't working and add new arms based on emerging evidence. Well-run adaptive trials can be smaller, faster, and more ethical and are well-suited to this moment. The WHO is starting a large trial of this type, testing multiple coronavirus approaches alongside hydroxychloroquine. It's a good blueprint that should inform further studies to broaden access, answer emerging questions, and examine treatments the WHO didn't include. It'd be best if the president supported responsible efforts to speed development behind the scenes rather than behind the podium. I'm Max Neeson. For more opinion, please go to Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN Go on the Bloomberg terminal.
This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
You can hear Bloomberg Opinion commentaries every weekday at this time. Terminal customers can read more at OPIN Go. Just before 6:39 on Wall Street, we're coming off 2 consecutive days of gains for U.S. stocks. It's the first time that's happened in a month and a half. And opportunities are starting to present themselves in markets. That's according to the CEO of UBS, who says clients are starting to get back in. We spoke with Sergio Armati just an hour ago. Here's what he had to say.
You remember we spoke in the past that cash holdings were very high for a good reason, because people were very prudent and unconvinced about the quality of the market's developments. In that sense, having a large pool of cash available during the major correction has helped investors to manage the situation in an effective way. We do see people taking advantage of new opportunities. For example, this is time, in our point of view, to move into credit. If you look at historically from a risk-reward standpoint of view, not many times in the history where credit has been priced so attractively, and therefore we see people taking advantage of that. But also many clients have been very disciplined in sticking to their long-term asset allocation. Of course, once the dust settles, they will reevaluate how to do that, and in that sense, of course, we are preparing, to exploit opportunities that may be there with stocks or situations or sectors that have been particularly impacted. So I see also clients starting to take opportunities and step by into some opportunities.
That's UBS CEO Sergio Armati speaking with Bloomberg this morning as S&P futures are pulling back from some earlier losses, but still down 18 points. Dow futures down 61. NASDAQ futures lower by 47 points. This red headline crossed the Bloomberg terminal. Spain reported 655 deaths in the past 24 hours. That is fewer than yesterday. This is Bloomberg.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Apply by the 31st of March for a chance to win your first year in halls. Visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
This is a vital update from the government about coronavirus. To help save lives, stay at home. Anyone can spread coronavirus. Only leave your home for the following reasons: to shop for basic necessities, to pick up medicine or to provide care to those who need it, to exercise once a day, alone or with members of your household. Only travel to work when you absolutely cannot work from home. If you have to go out for any of these reasons, always stay 2 meters apart. Do not meet others outside your household, even friends and family. Stay home. Protect the NHS. Save lives.
Imagine winning 10 grand. Yes! With Set for Life, you could win 10 grand every month for 30 years. Get in! Amazing! Woo! Yes! Sweet! Unbelievable!
Play Thursday, and you could make every month amazing with Set for Life and the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Prize may be capped. Rules, procedures, and game-specific rules apply. Players must be 16 or over.
First thing you think of when you hear cancer, that's it. It's finished.
All of a sudden your life becomes about appointments and this test and that test. But then you start to just thank God that those tests are there.
Every single day, nearly 1,000 people find out that they've got cancer.
These donations are absolutely crucial for all of the research to help families like us.
Donate right now to Cancer Research UK.
For just £2 a month, you can make a real difference.
Thank you for your donations.
Of news and financial information 24 hours a day. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
Special report, coronavirus update. The Senate finally passed the economic rescue package late last night, now swollen to $2.2 trillion, over half the size of the federal budget. The bill now goes to the House, with the plan is to pass it by voice vote tomorrow, so House members don't have to return to Washington. Senators may be staying away from the Capitol for some time as well, according to Democratic leader Chuck Schumer.
It's how deep the coronavirus spreads that will determine when we come back. And if we can't come back for a long time, I think we should explore, as Senator Klobuchar and Durbin and Wyden and Warner are doing, a way to vote remotely only in an emergency situation.
States have reported receiving tens of thousands of new claims for unemployment insurance last week. Official figures are to be released this morning, and some economists project that new claims could reach 3 million nationwide. One possible reason why stock futures were down overnight after yesterday's gains. I'm Michael Toscano.
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrell.
Is that good for American finance?
What is happening with the headcount?
Right, where it counts. Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and futures are lower with S&P futures down 20 points, Dow futures down 85, NASDAQ futures down 51, the DAX in Germany's down 1.6%, 10-year Treasury up 20-30 seconds, yield 0.80%, and NYMEX crude oil is down 3% or 75 cents at $23.74 a barrel. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, the Senate has passed an unparalleled $2.2 trillion economic rescue package, steering aid to businesses, workers, and healthcare systems engulfed by the coronavirus pandemic. In New York City, it's a grim sign the pandemic is far from over. Teams have set up a makeshift morgue outside of Bellevue Hospital, something they did during 9/11 and Superstorm Sandy. At one hospital alone, 13 people died in just 24 hours. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, Michael, thank you. We are live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. We're at 648 on Wall Street. Time now to check what's going on in D.C., where some of the top stories include the Senate just before midnight passing that record $2+ trillion stimulus package to fight the coronavirus. Later this morning, President Trump will take part in a call with G20 leaders on the coronavirus response. And Fed Chairman Jerome Powell makes a rare appearance on a morning news show on television in just a few minutes, actually. Also making news, the president now saying he won't be rash in reopening the country, as the nation's top infectious disease expert warns the coronavirus has its own timetable. Let's get more on all this now. Wendy Schiller is back with us this morning, chair of the Political Science Department at Brown University. The big question, or one of the many big questions as we continue to deal with this pandemic, Wendy, is whether the president has been in sync with his health experts in terms of the response. What's your assessment at this point as the message, in some ways, seems to shift from the White House?
Well, Nathan, I mean, the president, is a person who will change his remarks or his perception of things based on either new information or inputs from a whole range of sources. Sometimes they're from his own people in the White House. Sometimes they're from other people outside the White House. We've seen this consistently. For health reasons, the good news is that for the past week and a half, looks like he is on the same page. He is trying to get businesses to contribute more equipment. He is vigorously supporting the stimulus bill. And remember, this is a really big shift for the Republican Party, the party that blocked the Obama stimulus bill, or tried to anyway. It's a big shift, and a lot of that shift is due to Trump. Because Trump's like, look, I got to get the economy back going. I want to win re-election. I don't want this to get totally out of hand. So people can blame him for lots of things, but he's pushed the needle. I mean, he's moved the needle forward on this. In terms of health, the Department of Health and Human Services and CDC, they can do a lot of things without giving Trump the details. So you kind of wonder whether there's a lot of things happening that he's not fully briefed on, just so they can keep him from disrupting whatever they're trying to do to protect public health.
What do you think that the president might not be being briefed on at this point? And what about this idea of opening up certain parts of the country that at this point might not at least be seeming to be dealing with as much of a hotspot of this pandemic, while other parts of the country, like on the east and west coasts, may be hunkered down a little more?
Well, I think that the president has to be persuaded by whomever can persuade him that doing that would just prolong this epidemic. I mean, and that's just clearly the message from all public health officials. You see governors essentially trying to shut down their borders. That's why we have the federal government versus state governments, and this is why we went from the Articles of Confederation to the Constitution. One of the reasons was we had borders erected between states. We had tariffs and customs and different currencies. You can't really have that. You can't have a national functioning economy when one state doesn't trust the people coming in from the other states. And that's true for trucks, for trains, no matter what kind of transportation or commerce you're dealing with. So it's just not feasible. So when you have a state that's not really doing lockdown, and then their people want to come to a state with lockdown, that state with lockdown is going to say no. So you're going to disrupt the supply chain and disrupt the economy. It's not really feasible. The president would be best advised to make sure that everybody is close to being on the same page for at least some modicum of time. We think that we're going to get this thing under control. So that's kind of the lesson he's got to be told. If he opens it up too soon and it comes back, it'll come back in the summer, early fall. That's much more, quote unquote, dangerous to him electorally than if he just gets a handle on it now.
Is there a perception out there, do you think, that the president is more focused on the economic impact of this pandemic as opposed to the human cost?
I think that's true, but the economic impact is a human cost. I mean, nobody wants to, it's brutal, it's heartbreaking. I mean, nobody wants to get it. We're all really deeply sad about all these people who are dying from it. It's horrible. But the economic toll is one that could really affect all families for a very long period of time. I mean, the kind of damage we're going to see psychologically from the uncertainty here to children who are at home for extended periods of time, maybe getting good remote learning, maybe not. That's a big toll on the country, and I don't think Trump's wrong in saying that there's a big toll in that domain as well, and we're going to have to make a hard choice at some point about balancing that toll, and that's realistic. So I think that's one of the reasons I think his approval ratings is inching up a little bit, is that I think a lot of people do think that way. The scary part is if you're dealing with something so contagious and so unknown and so deadly, do you make the wrong choice in favor of the economy, and then you damage not only more lives, but you also continue to damage the economy? And I think it's very difficult decisions to make.
Of course, many of our listeners are listening to this program from home offices in New York, and the stories coming out of the city are becoming increasingly dire. Reports of morgues potentially getting filled to capacity, freezer trucks having to be brought in. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has been putting himself out there every day pleading for more federal assistance. What do you see needing to be done in terms of more federal state coordination, particularly in New York?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is unfortunately the byproduct of the president's sort of hostility now to New York, where he's from New York. He made his whole life and career in New York, but New York doesn't vote for him. New York hasn't been particularly kind to him in general in terms of political opinion, and he's just thinking who supports me and who doesn't. But if you look at Louisiana, and I understand New York is sort of the economic and cultural capital of the country, if not the world, but Louisiana is experiencing a horrific rate of increase and a horrific rate of infection and death, and that's Trump country. So it's a misread for the president not to help New York, because other cities, particularly like New Orleans and other cities that do vote for him, are going to face the same issue and have the same headlines, and he will be held more accountable by those voters than possibly the voters in New York. So it's a misread by the president, and it's a very unfortunate thing for New York.
Thank you, Wendy, as always. Wendy Schiller is the chairman of the Political Science Department at Brown University. Karen.
All right, Nathan, thank you. It is 6:54 on Wall Street. It's time for the Bloomberg Small Business Report, and We are joined by John Tucker. Good morning, John.
Yeah, Karen, small businesses around the country in dire straits as the virus outbreak brings the economy to a standstill. The rescue package from Congress promises $350 billion in small business loans. There's concern that help could come too late. The loans being administered by the Small Business Administration, which, of course, is not known for its speed. Darren Van Tassel owns an arcade and a family entertainment center down in Georgia with a staff of 100 employees, and he joins us now. Darren, how do you expect this rescue package to help your business, and what steps are you taking?
Two strategies. Absolutely went to the disaster relief on the SBA website. Application was done. It is in. Did that Thursday of last week. I already received notification on Sunday that it was under review, so I'm happy to report that was an unbelievably quick turnaround time for the review to begin. On the unemployment side in Georgia, because when it was declared a health emergency by the governor, the stipulation that came out of the bill last Wednesday, or the law last Wednesday, where employers have to do the registration for unemployment, which is different rather than the employees. We've got 4 or 5 employees who are home on the mandatory sick leave and the amended clause for the Family Medical Leave Act. So there's all kinds of different sort of pieces. We're in the short rows of it right now. We're in the first couple weeks, so the negative excitement will quickly start turning into a long-term angst.
How soon do you need that help from SBA?
Can't be fast enough. We'd use it right now. And if we had it now, it could keep employees on payroll. Okay. I mean, just from where I sit, I can't imagine there's not a small business in America who's not filling these things out. So I can only imagine just the sheer logistics challenge of processing these are going to be.
What would you want to ask the SBA administrator?
You know, right now, and they may not know either, you know, what is our cap? What can these funds be used for? Or is it the payroll part? You know, are these going to be at zero interest? Because they're loans. It's not a bailout. These are absolutely loans that they get paid back. You know, just how low is the interest rate? Happy to pay them back. That part makes perfect sense. Is the payroll piece forgiven? I don't know. And, you know, that's the challenge of legislation, of course. But I think all those big questions I just asked, you multiply them by the millions of small businesses, and we all have the same ones.
All right, Darren, thanks. Darren Van Tassel, small business owner in Georgia, running an arcade and family entertainment center there. Right now, the Small Business Administration receiving up to 30,000 phone calls a day. That number is expected to surge to 60,000. Now, the magnitude of the rescue plan, unprecedented for the SBA, with $350 billion in loans to give out. Last year, it distributed, just for comparison's sake, $28 billion, less than 10% of the amount of the plan being passed by Congress. Karen.
All right, John Tucker, thank you. S&P futures this morning are down about 30 points. Dow futures down 160 and NASDAQ futures down about 74. 10-year Treasury up 17/30 seconds, yield 0.81%. Bloomberg Surveillance is straight ahead with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrell, and Lisa Abramowitz. For Nathan Hager, I'm Karen Moscow, and this is Bloomberg.
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
Hot, tasty, and ready in seconds. That's how most people like their coffee. I know because I used to have a coffee van outside London Bridge Station. Now I test coffee machines in the Which Test Lab. We find the machines that make the right amount of hot, tasty coffee time and time again. And the ones that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your home. Ah, perfect. Which.co.uk. Our tests find you the best.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care about each other, about our planet, about creating a better world for everyone, and becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Apply by the 31st of March for a chance to win your first year in halls. Visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
proposal. Can you make a call given the data?
Which segments of Alphabet's business are most likely to come under scrutiny?
Get all the pieces.
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
He's failed to gain traction.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
We are being taken out of our comfort zone by the coronavirus.
Dollar weakness is pretty much a good thing for a lot of the rest of the world.
Finance.
We are going to see a global demand contraction this year, most likely, for oil. The financial health of the business sector has deteriorated somewhat.
Investment.
Obviously, the value in high-vol stocks are going to continue to suffer.
It looks as though the bond market is talking itself into a recession here.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrell, and Lisa Abramowitz on Bloomberg Radio.
From New York City, for our audience worldwide, good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. Coming up on the program, the Senate approving a $2 trillion rescue plan as the ECB scraps curbs on emergency bond buying. A brutal economic reality is about to hit home. From the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio, hello Thursday. Here is your Thursday morning price action on the S&P 500 following the first back-to-back gain since the middle of February. Futures negative, down 28 points on the S&P, down a little more than 1%. In the bond market, treasuries with a decent bid, yields come down 6 basis points on 10s to 0.81%. A big rally over in Europe that we'll discuss a little bit later. And in foreign exchange, once again, just a little bit of dollar weakness out there too. Euro dollar coming up by 0.7%. The pound advancing by a little more than 0.5%. So stronger pound, stronger euro, weaker dollar against everything in G10. That's the price action. Your top story comes in around about 90 minutes time, Tom Keene. There is a story behind every single economic data point, a story of everyone's lives, and in initial jobless claims, that number is going to tell a story of economic pain for many, many people across the country.
Good morning, John. I'd really recommend to people that this is the first important statistic of this horrific natural disaster. John, we could talk all morning about the jobless claims number. It's a statistic. And as I look out in the sun rising here in Manhattan, I'm doing something, John, I've never done before, which is think about not the fancy hotels I see billionaires row off in the distance, but it's the small businesses to the Upper West Side, the small businesses down towards you on the Upper East Side and Sutton Place. They're getting absolutely crushed. It's really front and center. I have no understanding, John, of when these checks are in the mail to individuals and particularly to business people.
We're hoping in the next couple of weeks, and listening to Secretary Mnuchin yesterday evening, he said by the end of next week, some of these loans, the small business retention loans, may well be able to be made and dispersed on the same day. The Secretary is saying that could happen as soon as the end of next week. I hope that's the case, Tom. But how many companies out there don't have a week? How many companies out there don't have a couple of days? And that's been the problem of the last 2 weeks.
And I thought that John Tucker just had a really good conversation there with a gentleman showing that the effort is being made to get the paperwork done quickly. The other thing I'm looking at, John, and this again is away from the markets, and I know David Kelly coming up here in a moment. I've never looked out of this lovely window in New York and tried to figure out which buildings were the hospitals. They are absolutely beleaguered, from Ken Langone's 300-bed New York University Hospital way down at the end, John, in Greenwich Village, 23 beds. Over by you, there's 600 beds. Right next to me here is 1,100 beds in Mount Sinai in Manhattan. They're all full. I mean, there's a real crisis into the weekend, folks, here in New York. And as Wendy Schiller just said on Bloomberg Radio from Brown University, it's not just about New York. New Orleans is beginning to show some of these agonies as well.
We'll try and bring you a little bit more clarity on the situation through the next couple of hours right here on Bloomberg Surveillance. As I say, in 90 minutes' time, we'll get the economic data in America. We'll bring that to you live on Bloomberg Radio. In a couple of minutes' time as well, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Chair Powell, speaking in a TV program here in the United States. And if there's any headlines, we'll bring you those headlines a little bit later this morning. Phoning in, I'm pleased to say, is David Kelly of JP Morgan Asset Management, the Chief Global Strategist. David, always great to catch up with you. In around about 1 hour and a half, we're going to have some dreadful data in the United States of America. It won't surprise many people that it's ugly. It will be ugly. But how should we be thinking about some of these data points as they come in through the next couple of weeks, David?
Well, I think we should not overreact to them. They are going to be ugly. I mean, we could get 2 million new unemployment claims. That would be 3 times the highest number we've ever seen. That could be followed up by another few weeks of similar things. So I think the unemployment rate could quickly go above 10%. 10.8% is the highest that we've seen since the Great Depression. We could hit that. So that's all pretty ugly. But look at what's going on in terms of government action here to try and take the sting and the pain out of this. I think the relief bill that the Senate just passed early this morning will provide the ability for a lot of workers to get past this period and be able to pay their rent and pay their bills. And I think the idea is to really hold the economy in suspended animation until we get control of this virus. And we will eventually do that. I mean, that's the other thing. It's a long time. A year seems like a long time to wait for a vaccine. But when we get a vaccine, this thing is done. So it's not endless, but it is obviously painful in the interim.
Well, let's think a little bit more deeply about that particular package. There are some people out there saying that it won't prevent a recession. Well, it's not designed to prevent a recession. Yep. It's about limiting the damage and building a bridge through this very, very tough time and over some very troubled waters. So 2 big objectives for a plan like this: prevent more defaults and obviously limit layoffs. Do you think it can do that?
Well, I'm not sure that it's actually going to limit the layoffs. I mean, it may for some companies, because there is obviously a lot of this in which there's small business loans, which essentially you get, the really small business grants. You can use them for payroll. So I think that may actually limit some layoffs, and that may have some impact on the unemployment rate. But as you say, I mean, I regard this kind of as NyQuil. For the social distancing recession, I mean, we don't actually have something that's going to cure the common cold, but we can reduce its symptoms, and this is a way of reducing the symptoms, the painful symptoms of recession. We'll have to see on the layoffs, because it works 2 ways. Yes, we've given incentives to small businesses not to file for unemployment or to lay off workers, but actually that $600 payment per week on unemployment benefits, that actually gives an incentive to workers to actually get laid off. I mean, the average unemployment benefit being paid in January was $385. Now you're saying it's going to be $985 a week. That's basically $1,000 a week, $52,000 a year. There are an awful lot of workers, particularly in these industries that are most affected, who aren't making anything like $52,000 a year. So it actually technically makes sense for them to say to the employer, "Thank you so much for keeping me on the books. Would you mind firing me, please, so I can collect these unemployment benefits for the next 4 months, and then let's talk then."
David Kelly brilliantly said, and this goes, Lindsey Graham of the Carolinas was talking about this as well, which is the incentives and the perverse incentives and the constructive incentives that we're setting up. What is your reading on the history of this wall of money and what it does to the incentives of a nation?
Well, I think, at least it's temporary, because, you want to prevent hardship. And if you send out a check to people in cash, at the start, that does help. But there is some perverse incentive there, and you do want people who can work from home or work remotely or whatever. As you say, you're going to do yoga instruction over the internet. Fine, do it. You shouldn't have an incentive to say, "Well, I can't do that because I have to go down and claim unemployment benefits." So I think there are some problems in it. I understand the creaky system. This is the only way they could actually get the money out fast. And I get that, but there is that problem, and also all this cash. It's not actually going to stimulate economic activity, because what are you going to do with the money? Well, I mean, what can people do? All the fun stuff in life has been closed down. So I think we're going to sit on it, but that also means that when we have a vaccine and people can actually spend the money, we're going to have a real surge in economic activity.
I have a huge problem with this, folks, and so much of this is anecdotal and comes from, the experience along the way. I was at AEA, David Kelly, a zillion years ago, and Olivier Blanchard stood up and put up a chart, and he said, "Look, there's been a huge drop here in nominal GDP and real GDP. Here's the glide path back, and someday out there we get back to normal." Can we just assume that X number of quarters or years out, everything gets back to normal and the government basically gets to lower the debt that was incurred in the heart of this crisis?
Well, we could. So the first part, can the economy get back to normal? Absolutely. Once they may be slightly different companies. There will be some companies that die, and there's some companies that will be born. But once we have the all clear here on the disease, this economy will want to get back to full employment, and I think it can do that. Now, whether the government has the discipline to fade out all these things and take the hard choices, which it hasn't taken to this point. I mean, remember, in the last few years before this, we were running a boom economy, and we ran up a deficit to almost 5% of GDP, which is utterly reckless. So if we do that in the best of times, do we really think that we're going to have the discipline in Washington to cut the deficit afterwards? I'm pretty skeptical of that. So the economy can get back to normal, but I don't think that Washington's going to be disciplined.
John?
Tom, you say that many times. I assume you're going to ask a question. You do
no, I'm not going to ask a question. I'm just enjoying the sunrise here in New York.
David Kelly.
John, I'm getting used to this working at home.
I bet you are. And I'm sure everyone in the studio is getting used to it too. They might not want you home. They might want to keep you there. Hey, David, great to have you with us on the programme. David Kelly there of JP Morgan Asset Management. Tom, I'm going to get everyone some news, some headlines worldwide. We'll do that now with Michael Barr. Good morning to you, Michael.
Good morning, John. Good morning, Tom. The Senate has passed an unparalleled $2.2 trillion economic rescue package steering aid to businesses, workers, and healthcare systems engulfed by the coronavirus pandemic. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell told reporters this was a real bipartisan effort. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says safeguards have been included in the relief package to make sure the financial assistance is not abused. President Trump says that he'd like to see the country reopened by Easter, but experts in his own coronavirus task force aren't so sure. The top doctor on his task force, Dr. Anthony Fauci, says you've got to understand that you don't make the timeline, the virus makes the timeline.
After talking to my colleagues on the WHO call, I think it's more likely than not that this is going to turn around and come back in another season. Because right now in the Southern Hemisphere in Southern Africa, they're starting to get cases as they go into their winter. And if that happens, this is not going to disappear.
President Trump says he's spoken to New York Governor Andrew Cuomo about the 4,000 ventilators sent to the state. The president says Cuomo, who's said the state needs 30,000 ventilators in 2 weeks, was happy about the assistance.
I want you to know that I'm doing everything in my power to help the city pull through this challenge. I'm working very hard in New York. It's really by far our biggest problem. Maybe it will be, maybe it won't be.
More than 200 deaths from COVID-19 were reported yesterday in the U.S., a new high for fatalities recorded in a single day. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on quick take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John, Tom?
Michael Barr, thank you very much, sir. The Federal Reserve Chairman, Jay Powell, speaking to a morning show here in New York City on NBC.
What is it? It's the Today Show, right?
The Today Show. But for our listeners outside of America, Tom, just to explain to them, that is not a business program. That is a morning program that does a whole range of stories on any given day.
Yeah.
No, but it's important. I think the Fed chair is speaking to Main Street on a day where we're about to get a very, very ugly initial jobless claims print. So get some headlines, Tom, or are you going to talk over that as well? This is what the chairman had to say just moments ago. We may well be in recession. The economy will reopen once we have dealt with the virus. That is his view of things, and I think that is interesting at the moment, given what the President of the United States would like to see.
Yeah, it's like Peter Hotez yesterday at Baylor University drove the conversation forward on Bloomberg Surveillance, John, and what he said was simple. Atlanta and New Orleans, and that yes, the focus is on this New York City, but there are many other cities right on the cusp of maybe a turn towards some more difficult statistics. And of course, the chairman's purview is the nation, not just one big financial center.
Really, really tough times, and we'll be bringing that number to you in around about 1 hour and 17 minutes time. The estimate, the median estimate in our Bloomberg survey, 1.6 million.
But it's way higher, right?
281K. Yep, up from 281K to 1.6 million.
I mean, Ellen Zentner and others are talking millions, John, aren't they?
Could be more, Tom. Could be more. We'll bring you that number right here on Bloomberg Radio, live on Bloomberg Surveillance, alongside Tom Keene. I'm Jonathan Ferro, Herdin Katz. This is Bloomberg. Shake it up.
Why
is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Influential.
The happy family of three were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
Coronavirus is affecting us all. During this difficult time, we're helping critical workers to make essential journeys by public transport. So, from Monday the 23rd of March, TfL will be operating a gradually reduced service on our network. Some stations will be closed so that we can keep key stations open. Night tube and night overground services have already stopped running, but our extensive night bus service will continue. The Waterloo and City line is now closed. We will keep you updated as our services change. Search TfL.
Hot, tasty, and ready in seconds. That's how most people like their coffee. I know because I used to have a coffee van outside London Bridge Station. Now I test coffee machines in the Which Test Lab. We find the machines that make the right amount of hot, tasty coffee time and time again. And the ones that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your home. Ah, perfect. Which.co.uk. Our tests find you the best.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and U.S. futures are declining along with European stocks and most Asian shares as investors look past stimulus packages to the mounting human impact of the coronavirus outbreak. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures down about 29 points. Dow futures down 157. NASDAQ futures down 53. The DAX in Germany is down 2.1%. 10-year Treasury up 19/30 seconds. Yield 0.80%. Yield on the 2-year 0.29%. And the 30-year yield at 1.36%. NYMEX crude oil is down 2.4% or 59 cents at $23.90 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.2% or $3.20 at $16.31.10 an ounce. The euro 1.0973 against the dollar. British pound 1.1978 and the yen 109.78. VIX is at 63.40. And speaking on the Today Show, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell is saying we may well be in a recession. He also said the Fed will not run out of ammunition. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thank you. Thank you very much. We're in a difficult moment for many of you listening to this program for the global economy, particularly here in the United States, as big states like New York, California shut down. The chairman of the Federal Reserve today taking the opportunity to talk to Main Street, not just Wall Street, and going on a morning program here in the United States called The Today Show on NBC. That interview just wrapped up just a little while ago. Take a listen to what he had to say.
We may well be in a recession, but I would point to the difference between this and a normal recession. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with our economy. Quite the contrary. The economy performed very well right through February. We've got 50-year low in unemployment for the last couple of years. So we start in a very strong position. This isn't something that's wrong with the economy. This is a situation where people are being asked to step back from economic activity, close their businesses, stay home from work. So in principle, if we get the virus spread under control fairly quickly, then economic activity can resume. And we want to make that rebound as vigorous as possible.
The chairman of the Federal Reserve there, Jerome Powell, speaking to NBC just moments ago. The virus will determine when the economy reopens. That from the chairman of the Federal Reserve. Alongside Tom Keene, I'm Jonathan Ferro. Lisa Abramowitz slept in this morning, Tom.
Right.
So she's with us about 20 minutes late this morning.
That's exactly what happened.
I've got to say, I've never missed the start of a show in my life, Lisa.
Oh, yeah? Have you ever had your internet crash when everybody was working from home?
Excuse me, guys. Let me, folks, for those of you worldwide, let me set you up with the distinction of this discussion.
Thank you.
Children. No children. Okay.
Did they cut the cables?
This is not an issue of children. Actually, there might have been something dropped, but all I can say is I'm here. Let's talk Jay Powell.
Well, it's good to have you here. Well, let's talk Jay Powell. Michael McKee dropping by the studio as well. And Mike, I think it's quite interesting that the chairman has chosen to speak not to Wall Street today, but to Main Street on a morning where we're going to get some really ugly economic data.
Yeah, I think the whole point was to speak to Main Street and to reassure Americans that the government is on the job, the Fed is on the job. This is not your garden variety recession. He pointed that out. This is a very unusual situation caused by the virus, and they are going to try to do as much as possible to mitigate that. And when this is over, the economy can come back strong. A message aimed at reassurance more than anything else. Almost nothing in there for Wall Street.
Michael McKee, as I was doing research about this and other things at 4:30 a.m., because I did not sleep in, I'm curious from your perspective why he chose NBC's Today Show, a very mainstream type of broadcast, not directed at the business community, to give his very rare TV appearance.
Well, Fed chairs tend to do that. They tend to go on mainstream television. You remember Ben Bernanke went on the 60 Minutes program. Janet Yellen went on the PBS NewsHour. They want to reach a broad audience rather than Wall Street because the Fed obviously gets so much scrutiny that anything the chair says is imbued with extra weight for traders. And in this case, that wasn't the point. He did say that they could do $4 trillion, as we've been reporting, in lending, and that would not be inflationary. He also talked a little bit about what was in the stimulus bill. Not very much, but he talked about the fact they could do asset-backed purchases, which we all knew, but those were kind of the only messages that Wall Street could really take out of this.
Michael McKee, I can assure you all of Main Street is listening when you ask a question at the Federal Reserve press conference.
NBC didn't let me ask today.
As you do. When I look, Michael, at this, I just calculated, folks, the unemployment benefits for New York State, and it comes out to a big round $26,000 a year, which is taxable. Michael McKee, this is Band-Aid stuff. Do you just assume soon we see more aid if this virus continues?
Sure. It's Band-Aid stuff. It's going to be, the idea is this plus the money that the government is going to cut you in a check and the increased benefits would sort of make you whole if you're off the job. The other side of that is these lending programs, in theory, if they can get them out there in time, would go to companies that keep people on the payroll. The idea is to disrupt people's lives and payrolls as little as possible. I'm not sure how it's all going to work. The biggest area, Tom, in which they probably need to come back is aid to states and cities, because they're really going to be hurting, because not just the the expense of dealing with the virus. But since nobody's shopping except for the toilet paper you bought, nobody's paying taxes. And so the tax hole, the revenue hole for states is going to be huge. Andrew Cuomo, the New York governor, said the bill gives New York $3.8 billion, but the revenue shortfall is going to be $9 to $10 billion.
Yeah.
So there is an anticipation they will have to come back and try to do something else to help.
Mike, let's just briefly talk about whether having signs of success or seeing signs of success in this market at the moment. The tension in FX markets that we saw last week, this huge rush for the US dollar, easing just a little bit. I've got some real dollar weakness on the screen once again. Are you seeing signs of success emerge through markets off the back of the Fed's big push in the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, there is evidence of that. We're seeing cross-currency basis swaps come in. We're seeing some evidence that their dollars are getting out there. We've seen spreads on a number of instruments, including commercial paper, come down. We're not normalized yet, but we're heading in that direction. Repo seems to be working very, very well. The Fed's kind of happy with that right now.
Michael McKee joining us on the latest comments from the Chairman of the Federal Reserve. Chair Powell, we are not going to run out of ammunition, speaking to NBC's The Today Show just moments ago. In the FX market, guys, things are looking a little bit better for everything else against the US dollar and G10. The euro up by 0.9% this morning.
Yeah, I'd really point out, John and Lisa, that the survey number, which John mentioned earlier, this is the ECO Go screen on the terminal, folks. I've never seen a number more out of whack with zeitgeist, John, than this number we see in 1 hour, I should say. 1.5 million yesterday. It's up to 1.6-ish million now. And I'm seeing, 2 million, even 3 million statistics possible.
Yeah, and it's a week ago, and it could be a whole lot worse this week as well. Equity futures are down by 24 points. We're off by 0.9% from New York City this morning. Good morning to all worldwide. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Live on Bloomberg Radio.
Early here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
This is a vital update from the government about coronavirus. To help save lives, stay at home. Anyone can spread coronavirus. Only leave your home for the following reasons: to shop for basic necessities, to pick up medicine or to provide care to those who need it, to exercise once a day, alone or with members of your household. Only travel to work when you absolutely cannot work from home. If you have to go out for any of these reasons, always stay 2 meters apart. Do not meet others outside your household, even friends and family. Stay home. Protect the NHS. Save lives.
Imagine winning 10 grand. Yes! With Set for Life, you could win 10 grand every month for 30 years. Get in! Amazing! Woo! Yes! Sweet! Unbelievable!
Play Thursday, and you could make every month amazing with Set for Life and the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Prize may be capped. Rules, procedures, and game-specific rules apply. Players must be 16 or over.
It's Tune In Sports on this day. March 26, 1979, Michigan State beats Indiana State for the national championship, featuring the first of many Magic Johnson and Larry Bird legendary matches.
Michigan State University, national champions, 1979. But only one can make it. And Larry Bird, a great
To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, click on Sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We are live on Bloomberg Radio, where equity futures are negative 28 points on the S&P, 2 hours away from the opening bow, down a little more than 1%. In foreign exchange, a weaker dollar once again. The euro stronger against the US dollar. Euro dollar up 0.8%. Sterling advancing by a similar amount as well. And in the bond market in the United States, Treasury yields coming in 6 or 7 basis points on 10s to 0.8%. On a 30-year yield down 9 basis points to 1.36%. That's the story in the US bond market. A really interesting story developing in the European bond market this morning. 2 headlines crossed on Bloomberg just about an hour ago. The ECB says it started the bond buying under the emergency program today. This coming on the busiest weeks in January for debt issuance. It's important because we got some headlines from the ECB yesterday evening, Tom. There are these things called issuer limits, which meant the ECB would only buy up to 33% of any given bond issue. For this particular program, they've been scrapped. So they can go into the front end of Italy and buy as much as they want, as quickly as they like.
And to give some perspective here, folks, the first time I ever saw young Farrell, he was standing on the lawn of the ECB trying to tell me how bright he was about ECB dynamics. John, is this nothing more than the Germans finally capitulating?
On monetary policy, yeah, and quite a significant way, and on fiscal policy potentially as well. To see the ECB potentially just essentially get rid of all of these curbs around an emergency bond buying program, allow them just to go all the way into the front end of Italy. And just think about this, and I'm not saying they've done this yet, this is just an example of what they could do. If you had a bond issue from Italy, they could buy 100% of that particular issue now.
Yeah, to me, what this indicates is also a further consolidation of the Euro region, right? Like there was a lot of reticence to backstop Italy's government, Italy's bond market, the whole concept of not incentivizing them to be irresponsible. That's all gone away, and it's gone away in a matter of weeks. John, you've been talking about the whole thing. We're not here to tighten spreads, to consolidate spreads. Yes, they are, and that was
they're doing 2 weeks ago
in a massive way.
2 weeks feels like a lifetime ago.
Yes, it
that
does.
ECB presser to hear President Lagarde say we're not here to close spreads. Then 2 weeks later, essentially in the secondary market, they can come in now and buy almost 100% of any given issue in the secondary market for the sovereign space. That's a remarkable shift in just 2 weeks.
They're here to close spreads, period.
In a big way.
In a big way. And they're doing that this morning.
You're going to speak, Tom, or just cough a lot? What's going on?
Wait, this is important. Now, I had a lot of really good emails about coughing, and the good news is they brought in a nurse. Surveillance brought in a nurse.
Oh,
and she's from an island south of Manila, from one of the tribes, the Mayan tribe. And I'm drinking some tea that's absolutely undrinkable. I mean, Dr. Leslie Vinjamuri wouldn't drink this tea. It's got in it thin stuff from the Central Park Reservoir. And,
well, no kidding. That's the reason why you're coughing.
Totally undrinkable.
I need something stronger than that this morning. Let's bring in Leslie Vinger-Murray, shall we? Chatham House head of US and America's program. Leslie, fantastic to catch up with you. The Senate agreeing on a bill. Will this go through the House with ease?
Oh, absolutely. I think there was a question of whether it would go through without anybody needing to come back. It looks like that's not going to happen, but it sounds like they will vote tomorrow morning. It will go right through, and President Trump will sign it off. This is an extraordinary package. It comes at an extraordinary time. There have been a lot of concessions on both sides. There's been it's bipartisan. Some of the lessons of 2008 that the Democrats have drawn and they've used to push for oversight of that money that's going to be used to give loans to small and medium-sized businesses to think about helping the airlines industry. Those have been incorporated into the package. So I think we're seeing a lot of concessions because people recognize that there needs to be a response to an economy that's basically being shut down by this pandemic.
Dr. Vinger-Murray, a lot of eyes are on the United States, in part because it is quickly becoming the epicenter of the coronavirus, and also because it is the world's biggest economy. There is a question about calling it a stimulus, that is inaccurate. This is an effort to plug a bit of the hole. How much of the hole will this plug, if this is it, if this is the stimulus, if you want to call it that we get? How much does it sort of stave off the decline?
Well, look, we can't answer that question until we have some sense of how effective the response will be to dealing with the real problem, which you've rightly noted is the health crisis caused by this pandemic. And so if we don't have a push on testing, on ventilators, on coordinating the production and distribution of protective equipment that we need in the hospitals desperately in New York, in California, in other parts of the United States, if that response doesn't do what it needs to do in a timely way, then of course the economic question is going to come right back to us because it's a result of America's drive to actually deal with the pressure on our hospitals and the pressure on our communities and the people that are, staying home, not because they don't have jobs, but because businesses are closed.
I want to talk also about the state response, because New York State has come out and slammed the bill, saying that it was completely inadequate, the amount that was attributed to New York. They're basically saying that this virus is not hitting all regions evenly. What's your sense of that in terms of how much the support was skewed toward different interests, toward different groups, or is it sort of a very fair look at the virus, its impact, and how to stop some of the decline?
Look, I think the first thing to note is that it is an extraordinary package. We have never seen anything like that. And the focus on direct cash payments to people who are out of work, the focus on unemployment, the focus on supporting businesses so that they can keep people, not turning up every day, but they don't have to get rid of their jobs. That if they do that, the loans will be, forgiven, and there's oversight. This is all extraordinarily important. Of course, there were lots of interests pushing for different things. We saw the size of the package double, and virtually double over the course of several days. New York State is in a difficult position, and the need for the medical equipment is the number one concern, and not only the money for it, but actually getting firms, directing them to put their effort into manufacturing those products and distributing them in a way that is cognizant of the very different needs right now across the country.
The trend here, the ramp up of this fiscal support is tangible. John has mentioned that, of course, folks, over the last number of days. Leslie Vinger-Murray is with us with Chatham House. Leslie, you're maybe the most qualified person I can imagine working out of London, of understanding the social differences of how politicians are approaching this in America versus in Europe. What's the major distinction of the pandemic debate among politicians in America versus what you observe on continental Europe and the United Kingdom?
Well, I think there are two things. Europeans, it's a sweeping generalization, but it does hold true, have, been more committed to national health systems, to responses that are coordinated from the center. And in some ways, you could argue, America's coming closer to Europe. It's moving to the left. It's moving closer to Europe on questions of unemployment insurance. But the big difference still is that we are seeing a federally driven responsiveness in the U.S., and that's very different from what's happening in Europe. In Europe, it's coming from the center. The states, the 50 states, across the United States are taking very different policies. They're driving resources. They're making the decisions about medical responses so that we don't see a central response in the same way in the U.S. yet. But I think that's going to change. It's going to have to change.
Dr. Vinjamuri, thank you so much. Leslie Vinjamuri is with Chatham House. The Bloomberg NJIT STEM Report is brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, transforming computing professionals into data scientists to meet demand in this fast-growing field. More at njit.edu/Jersey City. Here's Bob Moon.
Tom, Lisa, Jonathan, good morning. Here's what's making news in science, technology, engineering, and math. Netflix customers suffered outages yesterday at a time when coronavirus lockdowns have caused home viewing to surge. Complaints poured in from the U.S. and Europe, spiking a little after noon New York time, but the streaming giant says the problem has been resolved. Netflix operates the world's most popular paid TV network and is the second biggest driver of internet traffic in the world. A person familiar with the issue says Netflix has reduced video quality in India, Australia, and some Latin American countries after conversations with internet service providers and governments. They're concerned about preserving web access for hundreds of millions of people stuck at home and working remotely. Video streaming is one of the biggest strains on the web infrastructure. Alphabet's YouTube, the biggest web traffic hog, reduced its default video quality around the world this week. The mass of Americans working from home is blurring lines around when an hourly worker punches in and punches out. Experts say that could trigger legal issues surrounding who's eligible for overtime pay and requirements to be on call, an issue already vexing some courts. And the House and Senate included at least $26 million in their just-passed virus response bill to support technology assisting lawmakers with telework as they grapple with how to legislate through potentially months of social distancing. That's the Bloomberg NJIT STEM Report. Tom, Lisa, John.
Hey, Bob. Great work as always. Bob Moon there on the NJIT STEM Report. Time now to get you some headlines, some news worldwide. We can do that from New York with Michael Barr. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, John. Tom, Lisa. More than 200 deaths from COVID-19 were reported in the United States. It's a new high for fatalities recorded in a single day. New York City, with more than 25,000 positive tests and 210 deaths, has become the epicenter of coronavirus cases in the U.S. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio gave his prediction of how many New Yorkers he expects to contract the virus.
I've been honest with New Yorkers. Probably before this is over, half of all New Yorkers, if not more, will contract this disease. Thank God 80% of them will have a very mild experience. Even a lot of the folks we're talking about, the healthcare workers, if they're younger, if they're healthy, they'll probably miss work for a week, 10 days, and come back. But at any given point, a lot of them will be out, so that adds stress.
There's another area that is seeing a sudden spike in virus cases, New Orleans, Louisiana. Dr. Anthony Fauci is the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases.
It putters along, and you think you're okay, and then it starts to go up a little, and then bingo, it goes up in an exponential way. That's what's happening in New Orleans now.
The Senate passed their $2 trillion stimulus package during a late-night session. It now goes to the House. Although some lawmakers say it doesn't go far enough, it's a step in the right direction for most, including those losing out on their paychecks for the next few weeks. As part of that bill, the government will send people earning $75,000 or less a $1,200 check plus $500 per child. Those earning up to $99,000 a year will get a smaller check. The checks will go out on April 6th. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John.
Michael Barr, thank you very much, sir. The data will come through in around about 45 minutes' time here in New York City. We'll bring it to you right here on Bloomberg Radio. The data we'll be looking at is initial jobless claims, and the median estimate is 1.6 million. Bear in mind that is a guesstimate, Tom Keene. A lot of numbers out there at the moment. I heard from California, the governor yesterday, that said they'd had a million jobless claims in the last week alone.
I want to make clear to our audience, not sophisticated on this, there's the jobs report, which is actually 2 reports. We see that monthly, typically the first Friday of the month. This is different. This is high frequency. We see it every Thursday. It's got a huge countability to it, John, which makes it very much preferred by economists like Michael McKee.
The high estimate, 4.4 million.
I didn't know that.
High
Wow.
estimate.
Wow.
It's a massive range, massive
Wow.
range. And that 4.4 comes from Thomas Kosterg of Banque Pictet and C over in Europe. Citigroup looking for 4 million as well. So some ugly numbers could be coming through. Here in New York City, just 45 minutes away on Bloomberg Radio.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report, I'm Michael Barr. All the sponsors of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics will retain their sponsorship rights despite the postponement of the Games due to the coronavirus epidemic. The president of the International Olympic Committee, Thomas Bach, says it is a logical consequence that the sponsors of the Olympic Games, Tokyo 2020, that they keep their rights even if the Games are organized in 2021. Some key sponsors of the Games, including General Electric and Procter & Gamble, have agreements that are scheduled to expire at the end of 2020. And there's another major sporting event that's in limbo, the Tour de France. The cycling race is scheduled for June 27th. Organizers are thinking about holding a stripped-down version of the race. France's sports minister says holding the race is of paramount importance. And the manager of the Belgian team says if there's no Tour de France, the whole model of cycling can collapse. And that's a Bloomberg Business of Sports report. I'm Michael Barr.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically. Yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/C.
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
Coronavirus is affecting us all. During this difficult time, we're helping critical workers to make essential journeys by public transport. So, from Monday the 23rd of March, TfL will be operating a gradually reduced service on our network. Some stations will be closed so that we can keep key stations open. Night tube and night overground services have already stopped running, but our extensive night bus service will continue. The Waterloo and City line is now closed. We will keep you updated as our services change. Search TfL.
Imagine winning 10 grand. Yes! With Set for Life, you could win 10 grand every month for 30 years. Get in! Amazing! Woo! Yes! Sweet! Unbelievable!
Play Thursday, and you could make every month amazing with Set for Life and the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Prize may be capped. Rules, procedures, and game-specific rules apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. futures are declining along with European stocks and most Asian shares as investors look past stimulus packages to the mounting human impact of the coronavirus outbreak. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. Right now, S&P futures are down 35 points. Dow futures down 232. NASDAQ futures down 80. The DAX in Germany's down 2.5%. 10-year Treasury up 27 30 seconds, yield 0.78%. Yield on the 2-year, 0.29%. 30-year yield, 1.33%. NYMEX crude oil down 2.5% or 62 cents at $23.87 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.4% or $6.20 at $16.40.50 an ounce. The euro 1.0960 against the dollar. British pound 1.1984. The yen's at 109.61 and the VIX at 63.71. Investment opportunities are starting to present themselves in the markets, as according to the CEO of UBS, who says clients are starting to get back in. We spoke with Sergio Armati today, and here's what he had to say.
We do see people taking advantage of new opportunities. For example, this is time, in our point of view, to move into credits. If you look at historically from a risk-reward standpoint of view, not many times in the history where credit has been priced so attractively, and therefore we see people taking advantage of that.
And that's UBS CEO Sergio Armati. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thank you. Thank you very much. We've talked a lot about the volatility in the equity market. We've just had our first back-to-back gains on the S&P 500 since the middle of February. As Karen points out, the equity market a little bit softer this morning. That's the equity market. We've had some huge moves in foreign exchange on currency pairs that you wouldn't typically expect to see such big moves over the space of a week. Tom, in this 1 week alone, we have had a 114 handle on cable and a 120 handle on cable. That is a 6-figure range in the space of 4 days on the pound against the US dollar.
Our next guest is very good about talking about the log normal nature of this. Is that an opportunity to make money, or John, is that a golden opportunity to lose a lot of money?
It's an opportunity to lose a lot of money, I think, Tom. Let's bring in Jordan Rochester, shall we? Nomura G10 FX Strategy phones in from the heart of foreign exchange out of London. Jordan, great to catch up with you. Some huge dislocations in foreign exchange over the last couple of weeks. Your views on them?
It's been so tricky, John. For us, we really we ran the long dollar position very well. And what we're seeing now is the Fed backstop, the Powell put has come out, and the dollar is weaker here. And I have to give policymakers a lot of credit. They have come out of the box here and really thought about what do we need to do, how can we alleviate market pressures. But for us, it's a game of whack-a-mole. So at the moment, we've got the sledgehammer. They've really hit hard, and they've dealt with the immediate shock. But over the next coming months, we're going to see more and more credit blow-ups, despite the easing from both fiscal and monetary, because you can't save everyone. So how do we play it? Long dollars, but we've got to be opportunistic. So the pound you mentioned is around 120 at the highs this week. I think that might be the new level where people look to fade this. For us, we're looking for a much lower level on the downside, and that's because countries that will export oil or have current are a big sell here.
Jordan, let's do this. Let's get you re-hooked up again. We've got some difficulties there technically, and we'll do that and get Jordan Rochester back for important
I feel for him in a serious
way. He needs the tea that I'm having from
I'll
remote
tell you what, guys. I've got a serious dose of cabin fever at the moment.
You think so? I think join the rest of the world.
Can I just say that there's a scene in a Woody Allen movie where he's walking down the street. My recollection is it is with the acclaimed Miss Keaton, and he says, "Look, all I want to do is go to lunch with my friends."
I mean, literally, that is the world right now. That is all
Manhattan. And Lisa, we can talk about the acclaimed restaurant over by you, Celeste, on the Upper West Side, which is extraordinary.
Which is like 3 miles away from me, by the way, John.
Yeah,
but okay, carry on.
Yeah, 3 miles, that's close. You get in the Bentley and you go down. And the answer is, John, just the routine of going to lunch, whether fancy or papaya or cheap hot dog or whatever, it's gone. And it's not funny.
That sounds nice. The whole idea of going to get a hot dog. How about bringing your kids to the playground? That's a perilous act.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well said, Lisa. Well said, Lisa. I think that's really important. It's something that we don't take, that we don't understand. Jordan Rochester hooked up with us again with Nomura here as we get ready for this jobless report in about 40 minutes' time. We'll see that. Jordan, what are hedgers doing? And the other side is speculation. Is corporations worldwide hedging their foreign exchange bets? Is this environment a disaster for them, or do they get through it?
It's not a disaster, Tom. In terms of those hedges, they've all become a lot more valuable thanks to the pickup in volatility. But the tricky part now, I mean, before this call, I was talking with our traders. Volumes and liquidity is something like 20% to 30% of normal. And you can really see this in terms of the spreads between the price you pay and the price you sell at. In terms of vols, usually that's something like 0.2, 0.3 on the most liquid currency pair, which is euro-dollar. Today, that is just trotting around at way higher at 1.5 vols. So these are levels that still haven't yet come off despite the moves from fiscal and monetary policy easing. So, Tom, liquidity is pretty tight. And when it comes to the moves in markets, it's also pretty low liquidity as well. So it's really hard to make sense of the price action at times. Why it's risk on today can be just down to one or two major players rather than a broader market.